Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I provided security for Dugway Proving Ground for 4 years. Without knowing what that is, Dugway Proving Ground is a U.S. Army installation in western Utah that spans over 800,000 acres of land covered in desert and salt flats. We were working on chemical and biological defense projects, performed evaluations on weaponry, and also provided restricted airspace miles wide in every direction. My role there consisted of one thing: drive around the perimeter at night, check gates, track cars, and report anything out of place. The money was good. The silence was even better. I'm not cut out for a lot of people or a lot of pointless conversation. It didn't matter. 8 hours a day alone in a truck didn't bother me a bit. Most nights I got to watch coyotes and jackrabbits and an occasional pronghorn antelope standing underwear brick hard in the glare of the lights. Watch stars build a line across the black sky, listening to old country stations out of Salt Lake. It was clean work. It was predictable. That changed in March of last year. My name is Owen. I'm 34. I grew up in Toul and joined the Army at 19. I did 2 tours overseas, came back, and realized I didn't fit into the noise of civilian life the way I thought I would. When the Dugway contract came through a buddy, I took it without thinking twice. The base sits about 85 miles southwest of Salt Lake, tucked between the Cedar Mountains and the Salt Flats. In summer, the heat bakes the ground until it cracks. In winter, the wind cuts through your jacket like a blade. I started my shift at 10 p.m. on March 14th. The temperature was in the low 30s. Clear sky, no moon, just stars so thick they looked like frost. I clocked in at the main security building, grabbed my keys and radio, and walked out to Truck 6, a white F-250 with a light bar and a bed rack loaded with emergency gear. The truck smelled like coffee and dust. I liked it that way. Lena was finishing her shift when I walked in. She handled dispatch and perimeter coordination from a small office with 4 monitors and a radio console. She's maybe 40, short dark hair, always wore the same gray fleece and a headset that made her look like an air traffic controller. She barely looked up when I came through the door. "Quiet tonight," she said. "Weather's good, roads are clear. Gate 7 had a sensor trip around 8, but the camera showed nothing. Probably an animal." "Copy," I said. "You check in every 2 hours," she reminded me. "And Owen, if you see anything on the north fence line, call it in first. Don't drive up to it." I nodded. The north fence bordered the old test grid, an area we didn't use much anymore but still monitored. There'd been reports of trespassers out there trying to film equipment or climb the wire. Most of them were conspiracy tourists looking for something to post online. We usually just ran them off. I took Highway 196 west out of the main compound and turned onto Perimeter Road 4, a 2-lane strip of asphalt that wound along the base boundary for about 30 miles. The headlights carved a tunnel through the dark. Sagebrush lined the shoulders. Beyond that, nothing but flat desert and the black outline of distant mountains. At the first checkpoint, I stopped and scanned with binoculars. The fence looked intact. No fresh tire tracks in the dirt. I logged it in my notebook and kept moving. The radio crackled. Lena's voice came through. "Truck 6, checking position. Checkpoint Alpha, all clear. Moving to Bravo." "Copy." I drove for another 20 minutes, windows cracked, cold air washing over my face. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional pop of gravel under the tires. I liked this part of the route. It was far enough from the main buildings that the light pollution dropped to almost nothing. On a night like this, You could see the Milky Way stretched across the sky like a smear of chalk. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a star, but it was too low and too bright. It sat above the horizon to the northwest, maybe 3 or 4 miles out. Hard to judge distance in flat country. It didn't blink. It didn't move. It just hovered there, a steady white point that looked wrong against the rest of the sky. I slowed the truck and pulled onto the shoulder. I killed the engine and stepped out. The cold hit me hard. I could hear the wind pushing across the flats, but the light didn't flicker or shift. I raised my binoculars. Through the glass, the light resolved into a perfect disk. Not a sphere, not a triangle, a disk. Flat on the bottom, smooth on top, bright as a welding arc, but steady. No running lights, no navigation strobes, no exhaust trail. It hung in the air like someone had pinned it to an invisible board. I lowered the binoculars and watched it with my naked eye. It was still there. My stomach tightened. I'd seen plenty of aircraft over Dugway. We had helicopters, drones, fixed-wing planes running patterns at all hours. This wasn't any of those. The shape was wrong. The light was wrong. And it was inside restricted airspace. I keyed the radio. Dispatch, Truck 6. Go ahead. I've got an unidentified light northwest of Checkpoint Bravo, approximately 3 to 4 miles out. Stationary, no movement. It's inside the restricted zone. There was a pause. Then Lena's voice came back, tighter than before. Can you describe it? White light, very bright, disc-shaped. No strobes, no sound. It's just sitting there. Hold position. I'm checking radar. I waited. The wind pushed against my back. I could feel the cold creeping through my jacket, but I didn't get back in the truck. I kept my eyes on the light. It didn't move. It didn't dim. It just burned against the black sky like a hole punched through to something bright on the other side. The radio crackled again. Owen, I'm not seeing anything on radar. No transponder signal, no echo, nothing in that sector. It's right there, I said. I'm looking at it. I believe you, but the screen is empty. Can you get closer? I hesitated. My training said to call in unknowns and wait for backup, but the closest patrol was 40 minutes out, and if this thing moved before anyone else got eyes on it, we'd have nothing. Copy. I'm moving to visual range. I got back in the truck, started the engine, and turned onto a dirt access road that cut north toward the old test grid. The road wasn't maintained. Ruts and washouts made the truck bounce. I kept my speed low and my eyes on the light. It didn't react. It didn't shift. It stayed locked in place like it was bolted to the air. After about 2 miles, the road ended at a locked gate with a faded sign that read, "Restricted area, no entry. Authorized personnel only." Beyond the gate, the ground opened into a wide salt pan, white and flat as a sheet of paper. The light hovered above the center of the pan, maybe 200 feet up. I stopped the truck, left the engine running, and stepped out again. The cold was worse here. The wind had stopped completely. The air felt heavy, like before a storm, but the sky was clear. I could hear my own breathing, my boots on the gravel, and nothing else. I raised the binoculars. The disk was clearer now. I could see details. The surface wasn't smooth. It had panels or segments arranged in rings that spiraled toward the center. The edges were sharp, geometric, precise, and it cast no light on the ground below it. That's what bothered me most. A light that bright should have thrown a glow across the salt flats. Instead, the ground stayed dark. I keyed the radio. "Dispatch, I'm at the north gate." The object is approximately 200 yards out, hovering over the salt pan. It's not moving, it's not making noise, and it's not showing up on your radar? Negative, still nothing. That doesn't make sense. I know. I'm calling it in. Stay where you are. I didn't want to stay where I was. Every instinct I had said to get back in the truck and drive south until I couldn't see that thing anymore. But I also couldn't leave without documentation. I pulled out my phone and raised it to take a picture. The screen went black. I lowered the phone and looked at it. Dead. Not low battery, not frozen, just dead. I pressed the power button, nothing. I tried again. The screen stayed dark. Dispatch, my phone just died. What do you mean, died? I mean, it was working, and now it's not. Completely dead. Lena didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice had changed. Owen, I want you to get back in the truck and return to the perimeter road. Do it now. Copy. I turned toward the truck and froze. The light was moving. It slid sideways, smooth and silent, and dropped lower, not falling, descending under control like an elevator. It moved toward the gate, toward me. I didn't run. I walked fast to the truck, climbed in, and locked the doors like that would help. My hands shook as I put it in reverse. The headlights swept across the gate and caught the edge of the salt pan. The light was closer now, maybe 100 yards out and 50 feet up. I could see the spiral pattern on its surface rotating slowly, clockwise, like gears turning inside a watch. I backed up, turned the truck around, and hit the gas. The tires kicked gravel. The steering wheel jerked in my hands as I fought the ruts. I didn't look in the mirror. I kept my eyes on the road and my foot on the pedal. The radio exploded with static. Not voices, not Lena, just a wall of white noise so loud I ripped the handset off my belt and threw it on the passenger seat. The sound clawed at my ears. I could feel it in my teeth, in my chest, like the air itself was vibrating. Then it stopped. The radio went silent. The engine kept running. The headlights stayed on, but everything else felt muted, dampened, like I dropped into a pocket of dead air. I looked in the mirror. The light was gone. I scanned the sky through the windshield, through the side windows, out the back. Nothing. Just the empty black sky and the stars. I slowed the truck to a crawl and rolled down the window. Cold air poured in. I listened, wind, gravel under the tires, my own breathing. That's all. I picked up the radio handset. Dispatch, Truck 6. Do you copy? Static hissed back at me, low and steady. Lena, if you can hear me, I'm returning to the perimeter road. The object is no longer visible. Repeat, no longer visible. The static didn't change. I drove back to Perimeter Road 4 and stopped at Checkpoint Bravo. My hands were still shaking. I pulled out my logbook and wrote the time, location, and a brief description of what I'd seen. My handwriting looked jagged, uneven. I closed the book and sat there with the engine idling, trying to steady my breathing. The radio crackled. Truck 6, this is dispatch. Do you copy? I grabbed the handset. I copy. Are you okay? I'm fine. You went off comms for about 3 minutes. What happened? I don't know. The radio filled with static, then went dead. I couldn't reach you. Same on my end. I lost your position marker on the screen. It just blinked out. The light is gone, I said. It dropped lower, moved toward me, and then disappeared. No sound, no trail, nothing. Did you get a photo? My phone died. I tried. It's still dead. There was a long pause. Come back to base. We need to file a report. Copy. I drove back in silence. The stars were still there. The road was still empty. But something had changed. The desert didn't feel neutral anymore. It felt watched. When I pulled into the security building, Lena was standing outside with a tablet in her hands. She looked pale. "Show me your phone," she said. I handed it to her. She pressed the power button, held it down, tried a reset. Nothing. She handed it back. When did it die? Right when I tried to take a picture of the light. She nodded, like that made sense, which scared me more than the light had. Come inside, there's something I need to show you. The office was warm. The monitors on the wall showed live feeds from cameras around the base. Lena sat down at the console and pulled up a recorded file. The timestamp read 23:47, about 15 minutes before I'd reached the north gate. This is from camera 12, mounted on the northeast corner tower. Watch the sky in the upper left. She hit play. The footage showed the salt flats at night, lit by floodlights from the tower. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Then a small white dot appeared in the upper left corner of the frame. It dropped into view, stopped, and hung there. The camera's timestamp flickered, jumped forward 3 seconds, then corrected itself. The dot slid right out of frame. That's it, I said. I know, but watch the timestamp. She played it again. The moment the light appeared, the timestamp flickered and jumped. When the light left the frame, the timestamp stabilized. It's interfering with the camera system, she said, or the system can't process what it's recording. She looked at me. That's the same thing. She pulled up another file, this one from camera 9, which covered the access road I'd driven. The footage showed my truck's headlights moving north. Then the feed went black for exactly 2 minutes and 40 seconds. When it came back, my truck was already on the return route, heading south. I lost visual on you completely, she said. No signal, no recording, nothing. It's like you drove into a hole and came out the other side. Did you report it? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I sat down in the chair across from her. What do we say? That I saw a disc-shaped light that doesn't show up on radar and kills electronics when you get close to it? That's exactly what we say. Because that's what happened. She typed up a report while I filled out an incident form. We kept it factual. Time, location, description, duration, electronic failures. No speculation, no theories, just the data. At the end of my shift, I clocked out and drove home to my apartment in Toul. The sun was coming up. The sky turned pink over the mountains. Everything looked normal, but when I plugged my phone into the charger, it stayed dead. I left it there and went to bed. I dreamed about the light, not hovering in the sky, but inside my apartment, pressed against the window, spiraling slowly like it was looking for a way in. I woke up at noon, sweating, my heart pounding. The phone on the charger was still dead. I took it to a repair shop that afternoon. The technician opened it up, ran diagnostics, and shook his head. Battery's fine, screen's fine, but the logic board is fried. I've never seen a burn pattern like this. It's like something cooked it from the inside without leaving a scorch mark. Can you fix it? No. You'd need a whole new board. And at that point, you're better off buying a new phone. I bought a new phone. I didn't tell him how the old one died. That night, I went back to work. Lena was already at the console when I walked in. She looked tired. Did you sleep? I asked. Not much. You? Same. She pulled up the radar logs from the previous night and walked me through them. From 23:45 to 0:15, there were no contacts in the northwest sector. No aircraft, no drones, no anomalies. Just empty sky. Whatever it was, it's invisible to our systems, she said. Or our systems aren't built to see it. She didn't argue. I took Truck 6 out on the same route. The roads were empty. The sky was clear. I stopped at Checkpoint Bravo and scanned the horizon with binoculars. Nothing. I drove to the north gate and sat there for 10 minutes, engine running, watching the salt flats. The ground looked white and dead under the stars. I saw no light, I felt no vibration, I heard no static. But I didn't get out of the truck. At 2 a.m., I checked in with Lena. All clear, no activity. Copy, stay sharp. The rest of the week passed without incident. I drove my routes, logged my checkpoints, and tried not to think about the light. But every time I looked at the northwest horizon, my chest tightened. On March 21st, 7 days after the first sighting, it came back. I was at Checkpoint Charlie about 5 miles south of the North Gate when Lena's voice crackled over the radio. "Truck 6, I need you to stop what you're doing and look northwest." I pulled over and stepped out. The night was colder than before. Clouds covered half the sky, but the northwest quadrant was clear. The light was there, same position, same brightness, same disk shape. It hung above the salt flats like it had never left. "I see it," I said. "Good, don't approach. I'm recording everything. Just observe and report." I raised my binoculars. The spiral pattern on the surface was rotating again, slow and deliberate. I could see faint seams between the panels, geometric lines that divided the disk into sections. It looked machined, engineered, intentional. Then it split. The disk didn't break apart. It divided cleanly into 3 smaller disks, each one a third of the original size. They separated in perfect synchronization, forming a triangle in the sky. The spacing between them stayed equal, precise, like they were locked to invisible rails. My mouth went dry. "Dispatch, the object just split into 3 separate craft. They're holding a triangular formation." Lena's voice came back tight. "Copy. I still have nothing on radar." The 3 disks rotated in place. Then, as one, they dropped lower and accelerated south. Not fast enough to blur, but faster than anything I'd seen move without sound. They crossed the salt pan, passed over the north fence line, and vanished behind a low ridge about 2 miles from my position. "They're heading south," I said, "toward the interior test range. Stay put, I'm alerting base security." I stood there with the binoculars pressed to my face, scanning the ridge. Nothing appeared. The sky was empty again. 5 minutes later, a patrol truck roared past me heading north, light bar flashing. I recognized the driver, a guy named Mitchell. He didn't stop. I waited another 10 minutes, then Lena called me back. "Return to base. We're pulling all perimeter units in." "What's going on? Just come back." When I reached the security building, there were 4 trucks parked outside and a cluster of personnel standing near the entrance. Mitchell was there, talking with his hands, his face flushed. I walked over. "Did you see them?" I asked. He turned to me. "See them? I drove right under them." "Where?" "Test range 5, 3 lights in a triangle, maybe 80 feet up, moving in formation." Silent. I stopped the truck and they stopped with me. When I moved, they moved. It was like they were pacing me. "How long?" 3 minutes. Then they shot straight up and disappeared. No acceleration curve. They just went from hovering to gone. Lena came outside and waved us in. Inside, the office was crowded. 6 security personnel, 2 range supervisors, and a man I didn't recognize in a dark jacket and no name tag. He looked at me when I walked in. "You're Owen?" "Yes, sir." "You saw the object on March 14th? "I did." "Describe it." I went through the details. Disc-shaped, white light, spiral surface, electronic interference, silent movement. He listened without interrupting, then asked, "Did it make any attempt to communicate?" "No." "Did it approach your vehicle?" "It moved toward me when I was at the north gate, but it didn't close the distance. It stayed maybe 100 yards out." He nodded and looked at Mitchell. Same questions. Mitchell repeated his account. When he finished, the man in the jacket closed his notebook and stood. We're implementing a 72-hour observation protocol. All perimeter and range personnel will maintain normal operations but report any visual anomalies immediately. No one approaches unidentified lights. No one attempts to photograph or record without authorization. Any electronic failures are to be logged and reported within the hour. Questions? No one spoke. Good. This briefing is classified. You don't discuss it outside this room. He left. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then everyone started talking at once. Lena pulled me aside. I need you to take 3 days off, she said. Why? Because you look like you haven't slept in a week. And if those things come back, I need you sharp, not running on fumes. I'm fine. Owen, you're not fine. Go home. I'll call you if anything happens. I wanted to argue, but she was right. My hands were shaking. My eyes felt dry and heavy. I drove back to Toole and slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, I checked my phone. No calls from Lena. I made coffee and sat on my balcony watching the sky. It was blue and empty. A few contrails from commercial jets. Nothing else. The 3 days passed slowly. I kept the news on in the background, scanning for reports of strange lights or military incidents in western Utah. Nothing. I checked online forums and conspiracy sites. Plenty of old sightings near Dugway, but nothing recent. On the 3rd day, Lena texted me. Back to work tonight, briefing at 9:30. I showed up early. The office was quiet. Lena was alone at the console, watching the monitors. Anything happen while I was gone? I asked. 2 more sightings, different locations, same characteristics. Silent, disc-shaped, radar invisible. They're showing up every 3 to 4 days now. Have they approached anyone else? Not directly, but they're getting closer to the main compound. Last one was spotted only 2 miles from the airfield. The briefing was short. The man in the jacket was back, along with 2 others I didn't recognize. They laid out the new protocol. Increased patrols, overlapping coverage zones, direct reporting lines. They also brought in new equipment, upgraded cameras with higher resolution, portable radar units, electromagnetic field detectors. They didn't say where the equipment came from or who authorized it. That night, I drove Perimeter Road 4 again with a new sense of dread. Every time I crested a hill or rounded a curve, I expected to see the light waiting for me. But the night stayed dark. The radio stayed clear. My phone stayed alive. At Checkpoint Bravo, I stopped and set up one of the new EMF detectors on the hood of the truck. The device had a small screen that showed a baseline reading of the ambient electromagnetic field. It registered steady at 0.3 milligauss. Normal. I scanned the northwest horizon. Clear. At 1:15 a.m., the detector spiked. The needle jumped from 0.3 to 4.7 in less than a second, then kept climbing. 6.2, 9.8, 15.3. The screen flashed red. An alarm beeped. I grabbed my binoculars and looked northwest. The light was there, but this time it wasn't alone. 5 discs hung in the sky above the salt flats, arranged in a perfect pentagon. Each one glowed with that same hard white light, their surfaces spiraling in synchronized rotation. They hovered at different altitudes, staggered like steps leading up into the dark. The lowest disc was maybe 100 feet up. The highest was twice that. I keyed the radio. Dispatch, Truck 6, multiple contacts northwest of Checkpoint Bravo. 5 objects in formation. EMF detector is reading over 15 milligauss and climbing. Lena's voice came back fast. Copy. Hold position. I'm seeing the same spike on the base sensors. Every detector within a 2-mile radius just lit up. Are you getting this on camera? Negative. Cameras 11 and 12 are showing static. camera 9 just went offline completely. I watched the discs through the binoculars. They weren't moving yet, just hovering in place, rotating slowly. The EMF detector hit 22.6, and the alarm got louder. I turned it off to hear the radio better. "Owen, I need you to back away from that position. Put distance between you and those objects." "Copy, moving now." I climbed into the truck and started the engine. As soon as I put it in gear, the discs responded. All 5 of them tilted forward at the same angle, like a formation of aircraft banking into a turn. Then they accelerated south, moving in perfect unison, maintaining their pentagon shape. They were heading straight for me. I punched the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires kicking gravel. I didn't bother with the ruts or the washouts. I just drove, eyes on the road, hands locked on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, I could see the discs closing the distance. They moved faster than before, smooth and silent, their light reflecting off the salt flats below them. The radio hissed with static. I ignored it. The road curved east and I followed it, trying to keep the truck steady. The headlights bounced and jerked. Sagebrush blurred past the windows. The discs pulled ahead of me. They didn't overtake the truck from behind. They just appeared in front, cutting across my path and stopping in a line about 200 yards out. The pentagon formation had broken. Now they formed a wall, hovering side by side, blocking the road. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded, fishtailed, and stopped maybe 50 yards from the nearest disc. Dust billowed around me. I could taste it through the vents. For a moment, nothing happened. The discs hovered. I sat in the truck, engine idling, hands on the wheel. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then the center disc moved. It drifted forward, slow and deliberate, and stopped directly in front of my truck. Close enough that I could see details without the binoculars. The surface wasn't smooth metal. It looked textured, almost organic, like overlapping scales or feathers arranged in that same spiral pattern. The edges glowed brighter than the center, and the light pulsed faintly, in sync with a rhythm I couldn't hear but felt in my chest. The EMF detector on the hood started to smoke. I saw the thin gray wisps curling up from the plastic casing. The screen had gone black. A faint chemical smell seeped into the cab. I reached over, popped the glove box, and pulled out a small fire extinguisher. But before I could open the door, the disc moved again. It rose higher, tilted, and slid to the right, opening a gap in the line. The other 4 discs followed, reforming their pentagon behind it. Then, as one, they accelerated straight up, not fast enough to blur, but fast enough that within 3 seconds they were gone. Just empty sky and stars. I sat there, hands still on the wheel, breathing hard. The EMF detector on the hood had stopped smoking, but the casing was warped and melted around the edges. I grabbed a rag from the door pocket, wrapped it around my hand, and carefully moved the detector to the truck bed. It was hot enough to leave a scorch mark on the hood paint. The radio crackled. "Truck 6, respond. Owen, do you copy?" I grabbed the handset. "I'm here, I'm okay." "What happened? I lost your position again." The objects blocked the road, 5 of them in a line. The center one moved toward me, then they all pulled out and went straight up. Did they make contact? No, they just stopped me, then left. The EMF detector melted. There was a long pause. Return to base. We're pulling everyone in again. Copy. I drove back slowly, checking the mirrors every few seconds. The sky stayed empty. The road stayed quiet. But my hands didn't stop shaking until I pulled into the parking lot. When I walked into the security building, the atmosphere had changed. The casual chatter was gone. People moved with purpose, their faces tight. Lena was at the console with 2 technicians I didn't recognize. all of them staring at the monitors. "Show me the melted detector," she said, without looking up. I brought it in from the truck. The plastic casing had bubbled and hardened into a warped shell. The screen was cracked. The internal components looked fused together. One of the technicians took it, examined it under a small LED light, and shook his head. "This was exposed to intense localized heat, but there's no burn pattern on the outside. It's like the heat source was inside the device, not external." "Is that possible?" Lena asked. "Not from any conventional source. Electromagnetic induction could do it, but we're talking about field strength way beyond anything we generate here." The man in the jacket appeared in the doorway. He looked at me, then at the detector. "Were you holding this when it melted?" "No, it was on the hood of my truck." "How close were you to the objects?" "Maybe 50 yards. He nodded. "Did you experience any physical symptoms? Dizziness, nausea, headache, visual disturbances?" "No, just elevated heart rate, but that's normal when something chases you." "They chased you?" "They moved toward me. Whether that's chasing or something else, I don't know." He wrote something in his notebook, then turned to Lena. "I need all recorded data from tonight. Camera feeds, radar logs, EMF readings, everything." "Most of the cameras went down when the objects appeared," she said. "Then I need the logs showing when and how they went down." He left. Lena turned to me. "You're done for the night. Go home. I'll call you tomorrow." "What's happening?" "I don't know yet, but whatever this is, it's escalating." I drove home and sat in my apartment with the lights on. I didn't want to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that center disk tilting toward me, its surface glowing and spiraling, the light pulsing like a heartbeat. Around 4 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Don't come in tonight. Day off. Orders from above." I texted back, "Why?" "They're bringing in a specialist team. Perimeter patrols are suspended until further notice." I stared at the message. A specialist team. That could mean anything. Military researchers, intelligence analysts, scientists. Or it could mean something else entirely. I tried to sleep, but gave up after an hour. I made coffee and sat on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the mountains. The sky turned pink, then blue. A normal morning. Normal traffic on the streets below. Normal people going to normal jobs. I didn't feel normal. That afternoon, I drove back to Dugway even though I wasn't scheduled. I needed to see what was happening. When I reached the main gate, a guard I didn't recognize stopped me. "Perimeter access is restricted today," he said. "I work here, security patrol." "I know. You're on the list. Still restricted. Can I talk to Lena? Dispatch?" "She's in a briefing. You can wait in the visitor area if you want." I waited. 2 hours passed. Personnel came and went, most of them in unmarked vehicles. I saw the man in the jacket twice, both times walking fast with a tablet in his hands. At 5 p.m., Lena finally came out. She looked exhausted. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I needed to know what's going on." She glanced around, then motioned for me to follow her outside. We walked to the edge of the parking lot, out of earshot from the building. "They set up a monitoring station on the North Range," she said quietly. "Full sensor array, high-resolution cameras, spectrum analyzers, the works. They're trying to capture data the next time those things show up." "When do I go back on patrol?" "You don't, not for a while. They've reassigned perimeter duty to a dedicated team with new protocols. So I'm off the road? For now. They want experienced personnel on standby in case things escalate, but they don't want anyone out there alone. Things are already escalating." She nodded. "I know. That's why I'm telling you to stay home and wait for the call. If they need you, they'll call. Until then, Keep your head down and don't talk to anyone about this." Who would I talk to? I don't know, just don't. I left. I didn't go home. I drove west on Highway 196, then turned onto a dirt road that ran parallel to the northern boundary of Dugway. It wasn't restricted, technically. It was BLM land, open to the public. I parked on a rise that gave me a view of the Salt Flats and the distant test range. The sun dropped below the mountains. The sky darkened. I sat on the hood of my truck with binoculars and waited. Around 9 p.m., I saw it. Not the discs. Something else. A faint blue glow appeared above the horizon, low and diffuse, like the shimmer of heat rising off asphalt. It spread slowly, covering a wide section of the sky. Within minutes, it resolved into a curtain of light, pale blue and flickering. It looked like aurora borealis, but we don't get auroras in Utah. Not like this. I raised the binoculars. The light wasn't uniform. It moved in waves, rippling and folding in on itself. And inside the waves I could see shapes. Dark spots, circular and evenly spaced, drifting through the glow like fish in water. My phone buzzed. A text from Mitchell. "Are you seeing this?" I texted back, "Yes. Where are you?" "East Ridge, same view." "What is that?" "No idea." Another text came through, this time from Lena. "Get off that ridge, now." I called her. She answered on the first ring. "I told you to stay home. I'm not on base. I'm on BLM land." "I don't care. That blue light is spreading. We're reading electromagnetic interference across the entire test range. If you're anywhere near it, your truck could die just like your phone did. I'm at least 5 miles out. That's not far enough. Leave, now." I looked at the sky. The blue glow was brighter, closer. The dark shapes inside it had multiplied. There were dozens now, maybe more, drifting in formation. "Owen, are you listening to me?" "I'm leaving." I climbed into the truck, started the engine, and turned around. The headlights swept across the dirt road. In the distance, I saw another vehicle parked on a lower ridge, headlights off, just a dark silhouette. I couldn't tell if it was Mitchell or someone else. I drove east, away from the glow. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lena. "Monitoring station just went offline. All sensors dead. Get clear of the area." I pushed the truck faster. The road was rough, but I didn't care. I just wanted distance. Behind me, the blue glow filled the rearview mirror. It looked bigger, brighter, like it was following me. Then it flashed. A pulse of light so bright it turned night into day for half a second. I jerked the wheel, nearly lost control, and skidded to a stop. I looked back. The glow was gone. The sky was black again. Empty. I sat there, engine idling, hands locked on the wheel. My phone buzzed. This time, it was a call from Mitchell. "Did you see that flash?" he asked. "I saw it." "What the hell was that?" "I don't know." "I'm heading back to the highway. You?" "Same." We hung up. I drove east until I hit pavement, then turned south toward Toel. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Lena. "Status?" I texted back. "I'm clear, heading home." "Good. Don't come back until I call you." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment with every light on, watching the sky through the window. I saw nothing, just stars and the occasional plane. But I couldn't shake the image of that blue glow, the dark shapes drifting inside it, and the flash that lit up the desert like a bomb. 3 days passed. No call from Lena, no texts. I checked the news. Nothing. I checked online forums. A few posts about strange lights near Dugway, but they were vague and quickly dismissed as flares or military exercises. On the 4th day, my phone finally rang. It was Lena. "Can you come in?" she asked. "When?" "Now. We need to talk." I drove to Dugway. The main gate was busier than usual. More guards, more vehicles, more checkpoints. They waved me through after checking my ID. Inside the security building, Lena was waiting with the man in the jacket. His name tag finally said something. "Dr. Halford." "Owen, thanks for coming in," Dr. Halford said. "I need to ask you some questions about the night of March 28th. The blue glow?" "Yes, you were on the East Ridge observing the phenomenon. Is that correct?" "I was on BLM land, west of the ridge." "Close enough. What did you see?" I described the glow, the dark shapes, the flash. He listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, he asked, "Did you experience any physical symptoms during or after the event?" "No, just adrenaline." "No headaches, no nausea, no memory gaps?" "No." "Good. We've had reports of personnel experiencing those symptoms when they were closer to the phenomenon." "How close?" "Within 2 miles. The monitoring station team had to be evacuated. 2 of them are still in observation." I felt my stomach tighten. What happened to them? "Temporary neurological effects, disorientation, short-term memory loss, visual disturbances. They're recovering, but we're keeping them under watch." "And the station?" "Destroyed, not physically, but every piece of electronic equipment inside was fried. Cameras, sensors, computers, everything. Even the wiring melted in places." Lena spoke up. "We also lost 3 perimeter cameras and 2 radar units that night. The blue glow covered at least a 10-square-mile area before it collapsed." "Collapsed?" I asked. "That's the only word I have for it. It didn't fade. It pulsed, flashed, and then it was gone." Dr. Halford closed his notebook. "Owen, we're assembling a small team to conduct ground-level observations. The plan is to set up mobile units that can move quickly if the phenomenon returns. We need experienced personnel who've had direct contact with these events. Are you willing to participate?" I hesitated. What does that involve? "Monitoring shifts, data collection, and rapid response if we detect another occurrence. You'll be equipped with protective gear and paired with a partner. The pay is double your current rate, and the assignment is voluntary." "For how long?" "Until we understand what we're dealing with. Or until it stops." I looked at Lena. She nodded slightly. "I'll do it," I said. "Good. Report back tomorrow at 0800 for briefing and equipment issue." I left the building and sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the mountains in the distance. I thought about the disk hovering in front of me, the blue glow spreading across the sky, the flash that turned night into day. I thought about the monitoring station team lying in hospital beds, their minds scrambled by something we couldn't see or measure. And I thought about the fact that I just volunteered to get closer to whatever was out there. I started the engine and drove home. Tomorrow, I'd find out what that decision really meant. The briefing room was smaller than I expected. 6 folding chairs, a whiteboard covered in diagrams, and a table stacked with equipment cases. Dr. Halford stood at the front with a tablet in his hands. Lena sat in the back, taking notes. There were 4 other people I didn't recognize. 2 men and 2 women, all in their 30s or 40s, all wearing the same neutral expression that military contractors have. Dr. Halford started without introduction. "Thank you for coming. What I'm about to tell you is classified under national security protocols. You've all signed the necessary paperwork, so I'll be direct. We don't know what these objects are. We don't know where they come from, and we don't know what they want. But we do know they're showing increasing interest in this facility, and that makes them a priority." He tapped the tablet, and an image appeared on the screen behind him. It was a satellite photo of the Salt Flats, overlaid with colored zones, Red zones marked areas where the disks had been sighted. Blue zones showed where electromagnetic interference had been recorded. Yellow zones indicated equipment failures. Over the past 3 weeks, we've documented 14 separate events involving unidentified aerial phenomena within or near Dugway's restricted airspace. Each event has shown consistent characteristics: silent operation, radar invisibility, electromagnetic interference, and coordinated movement suggesting intelligent control. One of the contractors raised his hand. Have there been any attempts at communication? No. We've broadcast on multiple frequencies, both audio and visual. No response. What about hostile action? None. The objects have approached personnel and equipment, but they haven't caused direct harm. The neurological effects experienced by the monitoring team appear to be side effects of proximity, not intentional attacks. Another contractor spoke up. What's our objective? Observation and data collection. We need high-resolution footage, spectral analysis, and field measurements under controlled conditions. If the objects return, we document everything. If they show interest in our equipment, we monitor that interaction. If they attempt communication, we respond. Clear? Everyone nodded. Dr. Halford opened one of the equipment cases. Inside were handheld devices about the size of a walkie-talkie, each with a small screen and multiple buttons. These are portable spectrum analyzers. They measure electromagnetic fields, radio frequencies, and infrared signatures. You'll also be issued thermal imaging goggles, high-resolution cameras, and personal dosimeters to monitor radiation exposure. He handed one of each to every person in the room. I turned the spectrum analyzer over in my hands. It was heavier than it looked, military grade, built to take a beating. You'll work in pairs, Dr. Halford continued. Each pair will be assigned a zone and a vehicle equipped with mobile communication relays. If you detect an event, you call it in immediately, document everything, and maintain a minimum distance of 200 yards unless instructed otherwise. Questions? One of the women raised her hand. What if the objects move toward us like they did with Owen? Dr. Halford looked at me, then back at her. You back away. Maintain distance, keep recording, and do not engage. If they corner you, stay in your vehicle with all electronics off and wait for support. And if that doesn't work, then you use your best judgment. Your safety is the priority. That answer didn't make anyone feel better, but no one argued. We spent the next 2 hours going through equipment training, communication protocols, and zone assignments. I was paired with one of the contractors, a man named Garrett, who used to work EOD for the Army. He was quiet, methodical, and seemed entirely unbothered by the situation. We were assigned Zone 3, which covered the northeast quadrant of the test range, including the salt flats where I'd seen the first disc. Stick close to your partner, Dr. Halford said at the end of the briefing. Trust your equipment, but trust your instincts more. If something feels wrong, it probably is. We loaded the gear into our assigned truck, a white F-350 with a reinforced roll cage and an upgraded communication array mounted in the bed. Garrett drove. I handled the navigation and equipment. We rolled out at 10 a.m., heading north on Perimeter Road 4. The day was clear and cold. Wind pushed tumbleweeds across the asphalt. We passed the turnoff to the old monitoring station, now marked with orange cones and caution tape. The equipment inside had been stripped out, and the structure itself looked empty and dead. We set up our first observation post near Checkpoint Bravo, the same spot where I'd stopped during my first sighting. Garrett parked the truck facing northwest. I set up the spectrum analyzer on the hood and powered it on. The screen flickered to life, showing a baseline reading of 0.4 milligauss. Normal. You really think they'll come back in daylight? Garrett asked. I don't know. Every sighting so far has been at night. Doesn't mean they can't operate during the day. True. We sat there for 2 hours, scanning the horizon, monitoring the equipment, and checking in with base every 30 minutes. Nothing happened. The sky stayed empty. The spectrum analyzer stayed quiet. At noon, we moved to a second position farther north, closer to the salt flats. The ground here was whiter, flatter, almost blinding in the midday sun. I pulled out my binoculars and scanned the area where the discs had hovered. Nothing, just empty air and heat shimmer. "How long do we stay at each post?" Garrett asked. 2 hours, then we move. That's the protocol." He nodded and settled into his seat, eyes on the horizon. I liked working with him. He didn't ask unnecessary questions or try to fill the silence with small talk. We just did the job. At 2 p.m., we moved again. At 4 p.m., we checked in with base and got the all clear to return for shift change. The drive back was quiet. I watched the sky the whole way, looking for anything out of place. The sun dropped toward the mountains, painting the desert orange and gold. When we reached the security building, Lena was waiting outside. "Anything?" she asked. "Nothing. Zone 3 is clear." "Good." Zone 1 reported a false alarm around 1300. Turned out to be a weather balloon from Hill Air Force Base. Other than that, it's been quiet. That's a good thing, right? Maybe. Or maybe they're waiting for something. I didn't like the way she said that, but I didn't push. Garrett and I unloaded the gear, logged our observations, and clocked out. Before I left, Dr. Halford pulled me aside. "Tomorrow night, we're running a controlled experiment," he said. "We're going to set up a high-powered light array on the salt flats and pulse it at specific intervals. The theory is that if these objects are responsive to electromagnetic activity, they might react to a deliberate signal. You're trying to summon them." "We're trying to establish communication. There's a difference. Is there?" He looked at me for a long moment. "You don't have to participate. This is voluntary." "I'm in. I just want to know what we're doing before we do it." "Fair enough. Be here tomorrow at 1900. Full gear." I drove home and tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't shut off. The idea of deliberately attracting those things felt reckless, but I also understood the logic. If we were going to figure out what they were, we needed more data, and if we wanted data, we had to take risks. The next evening, I arrived early. The parking lot was full of vehicles I didn't recognize. Inside the building, the atmosphere was tense. Dr. Halford was coordinating with a team of technicians, all of them moving quickly and efficiently. Lena waved me over. "They're setting up the array now," she said. "It's a grid of high-intensity LEDs powered by portable generators. They'll pulse in a sequence, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, like Morse code for SOS. And if something responds, then we record everything and hope it doesn't decide to melt the equipment." I geared up with Garrett. We were assigned to a position on the eastern perimeter, about a mile from the light array. Our job was to monitor for any movement on the flanks while the main observation team focused on the array itself. We drove out at dusk. The light array was already in place, a grid of lights mounted on tripods arranged in a square about 50 yards on each side. Generators hummed in the background. Technicians were making final adjustments. Garrett and I parked on a low rise that gave us a clear view of the array and the salt flats beyond. I set up the spectrum analyzer and thermal imaging goggles. The sky was darkening fast, stars beginning to appear. At exactly 2000 hours, the array activated. The lights pulsed in sequence. 3 short flashes, 3 long flashes, 3 short flashes. The pattern repeated every 10 seconds. The light was bright enough to cast shadows across the flats, turning the white ground into a stark landscape of black and silver. Nothing happened for the first 15 minutes. Then the spectrum analyzer spiked. The needle jumped from 0.5 to 3.2 milligauss in less than 2 seconds. I grabbed the radio. Base, Zone 3 observation. We're reading elevated EMF activity. Source unknown, Lena's voice came back. Copy. We're seeing the same on base sensors. All teams, stay alert. I raised the thermal goggles and scanned the horizon. At first, I saw nothing. Just the cold desert floor and the faint heat signatures of the generators. Then I saw it. A cold spot. Not heat, cold. A circular area about 10 feet in diameter, hovering above the salt flats, showing up as a dark blue void on the thermal display. It was the same effect I'd seen weeks ago, the cold shapes moving across the slope. But this one wasn't moving. It was just hanging there, stationary, about 200 yards northwest of the array. I've got a cold anomaly on thermal, I said into the radio. Northwest of the array, approximately 200 yards out. Can you see it with the naked eye? I lowered the goggles. The area looked normal. No visible object, no light. Negative. Thermal only. Copy. Main team is repositioning cameras. The spectrum analyzer climbed higher. 5.8 milligauss, 8.3, 11.2. The cold spot began to move. It drifted south, slow and deliberate, heading directly toward the light array. Cold anomaly is mobile, I reported. Moving toward the array. All teams, eyes on the array. If you see anything, report immediately. I watched through the goggles. The cold spot reached the edge of the array and stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a second cold spot appeared. Then a third, then a fourth. Within 30 seconds, there were 7 of them, all hovering around the perimeter of the light grid in a perfect circle. The array lights flickered, not in sequence, random, chaotic. Some lights dimmed, others brightened. The generators started to whine, their pitch climbing. One of them stuttered and cut out. Half the grid went dark. Base, the array is failing, someone reported over the radio. Copy. Main team, shut it down. Kill the generators. I heard shouts in the distance. Figures moved around the array, scrambling to reach the generators. The remaining lights flickered faster now, almost strobing. The cold spots began to rotate around the grid, moving in synchronized circles. Then they rose. All 7 of them lifted into the air at the same time, climbing fast. I tracked them with the goggles until they reached about 300 feet, then they stopped. They hung there for maybe 5 seconds, arranged in a perfect circle. Then they collapsed inward. The 7 cold spots converged to a single point directly above the center of the array. The point flared bright on the thermal display, so hot it overloaded the sensor. I ripped the goggles off and looked with my naked eye. A white light, smaller than a basketball, hovered in the air. It wasn't the same as the discs. This was pure, concentrated, like staring at an arc welder. The light pulsed once, twice, 3 times. Each pulse sent a ripple through the air, visible as a distortion wave spreading outward. Every generator shut down at once. The remaining array lights went dark. The radio hissed with static. My truck's dashboard lights dimmed and the engine sputtered. Garrett looked at me. We need to move. Agreed. I grabbed the equipment and threw it in the truck bed. Garrett turned the key. The engine cranked but didn't catch. He tried again. Nothing. Come on, he muttered. The white light above the array began to descend. Slowly, steadily, like an elevator lowering. As it dropped, the ground beneath it started to glow. Not orange like before, blue. the same pale blue I'd seen spreading across the sky 3 nights ago. "Try again," I said. Garrett cranked the key. The engine coughed, turned over, and caught. He didn't wait. He threw it in gear and we rolled forward, picking up speed as the truck's systems came back online. Behind us, the blue glow spread across the salt flats, radiating out from the array in all directions. The white light touched the ground and flashed, bright, blinding. I closed my eyes and felt the heat through the back window. When I opened them, the glow was gone. The light was gone. The sky was dark again. Garrett didn't slow down until we were back on the paved perimeter road. He pulled over, killed the engine, and we both sat there breathing hard. The radio crackled back to life. Lena's voice, strained and urgent. "All teams, report status." One by one, the teams checked in. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, all clear. When it was our turn, I grabbed the handset. "Zone 3, we're clear. Equipment intact, truck operational." "Copy. Return to base immediately." We drove back in silence. When we reached the security building, the parking lot was chaos. Vehicles everywhere, personnel moving fast, shouting to each other. I saw Dr. Halford near the entrance, his face pale, his jacket singed at the sleeve. We parked and got out. Lena ran over. "You're okay?" "We're fine," I said. "What happened to the main team?" The light came down right on top of the array. Generators melted, cameras destroyed. 2 technicians got burns on their hands from touching metal equipment. They're being treated now. Did we get any usable data? I don't know yet. The recording equipment went offline before the light touched down. Dr. Halford approached. "Owen, Garrett, I need your gear, all of it." We handed over the spectrum analyzer, the thermal goggles, the cameras. He passed them to one of the technicians, then turned back to us. "What did you see?" I described the cold spots, the convergence, the white light, the blue glow. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. "Did the light make any sound?" he asked. "No, just the generators failing." "And the glow on the ground?" "It looked like the phenomenon from 3 nights ago, but more concentrated. It spread fast, then collapsed when the light flashed." He nodded. "Thank you. Go home. We'll debrief tomorrow." I didn't argue. Garrett and I walked back to our personal vehicles. Before he drove off, he looked at me. "You still want to do this?" "Do what?" "This job, whatever this is." I thought about it. I thought about the discs, the blue glow, the white light that melted equipment and burned skin. I thought about the people lying in hospital beds and the technicians who'd just been evacuated from the array site. "I don't know," I said. "But I'm not walking away yet." He nodded and drove off. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the mountains. The sky was full of stars. Clean, quiet, normal. But I knew that somewhere above those mountains, something was watching us, studying us, waiting for us to make the next move. I drove home and tried to sleep. I managed a few hours before my phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Briefing at 0600. Mandatory." I showed up at 6 a.m. The briefing room was packed. Everyone who'd been on the observation teams was there, plus a few new faces I didn't recognize. Dr. Halford stood at the front, looking like he hadn't slept. "Last night's experiment did not go as planned," he began. "But we did learn something. These objects are responsive to deliberate signals. They're also capable of overwhelming our technology in seconds. The question now is whether we continue trying to establish communication, or whether we classify this as a security threat and hand it over to a different agency." One of the contractors spoke up. "What's your recommendation?" "I don't have one yet, but I will by the end of the week. In the meantime, all observation activities are suspended. Perimeter patrols will resume under standard protocols, but no one is to approach or attempt to interact with these phenomena unless absolutely necessary. What if they show up again on their own? Garrett asked. Then we document from a distance and report to command. No exceptions. The briefing ended. People filed out slowly, talking in low voices. I stayed behind and waited until the room was empty, except for Dr. Halford and Lena. "What really happened last night?" I asked. Dr. Halford looked at me for a long moment. "The truth is, I don't know. The data we recovered is inconsistent. Some sensors recorded extreme electromagnetic activity. Others recorded nothing. The thermal imaging shows cold spots that shouldn't exist. The cameras that did survive show light where there should be darkness, and darkness where there should be light. That doesn't make sense." "I know, that's the problem," Lena spoke up. "There's something else. After the flash, we found markings on the ground where the array was set up." "What kind of markings?" She pulled up a photo on her tablet and handed it to me. It showed the salt flats from above, taken by a drone at first light. In the center of where the array had been, there was a pattern burned into the ground. Not random, geometric. A series of interlocking circles and straight lines, radiating out from a central point like a diagram. "What is that?" I asked. "We don't know. We're still analyzing it." I stared at the image. The pattern was precise, mathematical, intentional. It looked like something you'd see in a textbook on geometry or sacred architecture. But it had been burned into the ground in seconds by a light that didn't behave like any light I'd ever seen. "Can I get a copy of this?" I asked. Dr. Halford hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but it doesn't leave this facility." Lena sent the image to my phone. I studied it for a few more minutes, then handed the tablet back. "What happens now?" "Now we wait," Dr. Halford said. "And we hope they don't come back." But I knew they would. Whatever these things were, they weren't done with us. And I wasn't sure we were ready for what came next. I went home and sat at my kitchen table with the image on my phone screen. I traced the lines with my finger, trying to find a pattern or a message. There was something there, something deliberate, but I couldn't see it. 3 days later, the discs returned. This time, they didn't wait for night. They appeared at noon, 5 of them in formation, hovering directly above the main compound. Alarms went off across the base. Personnel evacuated to shelters. Fighter jets were scrambled from Hill Air Force Base. I wasn't there. I was at home when Lena called. "Turn on the news. It's happening." I switched on the TV. Every channel was covering it. Live footage from news helicopters showed the discs hovering above Dugway, silent and motionless. The formation was different this time. Instead of a pentagon, they formed a straight line, evenly spaced, like markers on a runway. Then they moved. All 5 discs accelerated straight up, faster than anything I'd ever seen. Within seconds, they were gone, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air where they'd been. The fighter jets arrived minutes later. Too late. They circled the area for an hour, then returned to base. That evening, Dr. Halford issued a statement. The objects were classified as unidentified aerial phenomena. The investigation was ongoing. No further information would be released at this time. I never went back to Dugway. A week later, I received a call from Dr. Halford. "We're shutting down the observation program," he said. "The decision came from above. Everyone involved is being reassigned or released from their contracts." "What about the discs?" "They haven't been seen since the daylight appearance. As far as we're concerned, the situation is resolved." "You don't believe that?" "No, but it doesn't matter what I believe." I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring at the image of the pattern burned into the salt flats. I thought about the discs, the blue glow, the white light, and the fact that we had no idea what any of it meant. 3 months later, I moved to Oregon. I took a job with the Forestry Service doing fire watch. It's quiet work. I spend my days alone in a tower, watching for smoke on the horizon. At night, I watch the stars. Sometimes, when the sky is clear, I see lights that don't move like planes or satellites. They hang there, steady and bright, and I remember the disk hovering above the salt flats, its surface spiraling, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. I don't report them. I just watch. And I wonder if somewhere out there, someone is watching back. My name is Caleb. I'm 29. For the last 3 years, I've worked as a contract surveillance specialist at Dugway Proving Ground in western Utah. If you don't know what Dugway is, it's an 800,000-acre military installation where the Army tests chemical and biological defense systems, weapons and equipment that most people will never see or hear about. My job is simple: monitor security cameras, log vehicle movements through restricted zones, and flag anything that doesn't match the schedule. Most nights, nothing happens. I watch convoys roll through checkpoints, personnel carriers move between compounds, and the occasional coyote trigger a motion sensor. I sit in a climate-controlled room with 6 monitors, a thermos of coffee, and a logbook. The work is boring, predictable, and pays well enough to keep me from complaining. That changed on October 12th of last year. I started my shift at 10 p.m. The control room sits in the basement of Building 5220, part of the main security complex on the south end of the base. It's a windowless box with fluorescent lights, gray walls, and the constant hum of server fans. There are 4 workstations, but I was alone that night. Budget cuts meant solo shifts for surveillance unless there was a high-priority operation running. I clocked in, grabbed my coffee from the break room, and settled into my chair. The monitors showed live feeds from 24 cameras spread across the northern test range. Most of them covered empty desert, chain-link fences, and locked gates. Camera 7 watched the main access road leading to Test Site Alpha. Camera 12 covered the intersection where vehicles turned east toward the old chemical storage bunkers. Camera 18 monitored the perimeter fence along the salt flats. At 22:47, I got a radio call from Gate Control. Surveillance. This is Gate 3. Convoy inbound from Hill Air Force Base. 4 vehicles. ETA 15 minutes to Test Site Alpha. I keyed the mic. Copy, Gate 3, I'll track them through. Convoys weren't unusual. We got supply runs, equipment transfers, and personnel rotations 2 or 3 times a week. Standard procedure was to log the convoy's entry time, track it through each camera zone, and confirm arrival at the destination. Simple. I pulled up the schedule on my computer. The convoy was listed: 4 M1078 cargo trucks, transporting sealed equipment containers to Test Site Alpha for temporary storage. Nothing classified, nothing sensitive. Just routine logistics. At 23:02, the convoy appeared on Camera 5, the gate entrance feed. 4 trucks, desert tan, running in tight formation with headlights on. I logged the time and watched them roll through the gate. The lead truck had a white placard on the driver's door. The second and third trucks were identical. The fourth truck had a slightly different bumper configuration, but otherwise looked the same. I switched to Camera 7 as they moved down the access road. The road runs straight for about 3 miles, cutting through flat desert with nothing but sagebrush on either side. The convoy maintained steady speed, maybe 35 miles per hour. I could see the headlights of each truck in sequence, spaced about 50 yards apart. At 23:11, they passed through the camera zone for Camera 9, which covers a bend in the road near a dry wash. I logged the time. Everything normal. At 23:14, they should have appeared on camera 12, which monitors the intersection where the road splits toward Test Site Alpha and the old bunker area. I watched the feed. Empty road. No headlights. No movement. I frowned and checked the timestamp on camera 12. The feed was live, current time displayed in the corner. I switched back to camera 9. The convoy had definitely passed through. I'd seen all 4 trucks. I waited. Maybe they'd slowed down. Maybe there was a mechanical issue and they'd pulled over between camera zones. But we had overlapping coverage. There shouldn't be a gap. At 23:17, the convoy appeared on camera 12. All 4 trucks, same formation, same spacing. They rolled through the intersection and turned north toward Test Site Alpha. I logged the time and sat back. That didn't make sense. The distance from camera 9 to camera 12 was about 2 miles. At 35 miles per hour, it should take roughly 3.5 minutes. But the convoy had taken 6 minutes to cover that distance. I rewound camera 9 and watched the trucks pass through again. I noted the exact timestamp, 23:11:34. Then I switched to camera 12 and watched them appear. 23:17:22. 5 minutes and 48 seconds. I checked the road between the 2 cameras on the map. Straight line, no turnoffs, no places to stop that would make sense, and even if they had stopped, why? I keyed the radio. Gate 3 surveillance. Convoy is tracking to Test Site Alpha, but I'm showing a delay between camera 9 and camera 12. Are they reporting any issues? Negative surveillance. Convoy checked in at the last waypoint on schedule. No reported delays. Copy. I watched camera 14, which covered the approach to Test Site Alpha. At 23:21, the convoy rolled into view and stopped at the security gate. A guard stepped out of the booth and walked to the lead truck. I could see him talking to the driver through the window, checking paperwork. After a minute, the gate opened and the convoy rolled through. I logged their arrival time and noted the discrepancy in my shift report. Probably nothing. A camera timestamp issue, maybe. Or I'd miscalculated the distance. But it bothered me enough to flag it. At 23:45, I got another call. This time from the site supervisor at Test Site Alpha, a man named Vickers. His voice sounded tight. Surveillance. This is Vickers. I need you to pull up the convoy footage from tonight, the one that just arrived. Copy. What am I looking for? Anything unusual? The drivers are reporting a gap in their trip. None of them remember the stretch between waypoint 2 and the intersection. I sat up straighter. Say again? They remember passing waypoint 2. They remember arriving at the intersection, but none of them can account for the time in between. They're saying it felt like a blink. 1 second they're on the straight road, the next they're at the turn. All 4 drivers. All 4. My stomach tightened. I'll review the footage. Stand by. I pulled up the recordings for cameras 9, 10, 11, and 12. Camera 10 and camera 11 covered the road between the waypoint and the intersection, positioned about half a mile apart. I started with camera 9. The convoy passed through at 23:11:34, just like I'd logged. I watched the last truck clear the frame, its taillights disappearing into the dark. I switched to camera 10. The feed showed an empty road. Sagebrush, gravel shoulders, nothing moving. I fast-forwarded. At 23:12, nothing. At 23:13, nothing. At 23:14, still nothing. At 23:17:06, the convoy appeared. All 4 trucks rolling into the frame from the south. Same formation, same spacing, same speed. I paused the footage and checked the timestamp. 23:17:06. I switched to camera 11, positioned half a mile further north. The convoy should have appeared there within a minute or so. I scrubbed forward. At 23:17:45, the convoy rolled through. I did the math. Camera 9 to camera 10 should have taken roughly 2 minutes. But the trucks hadn't appeared on camera 10 until 5.5 minutes after leaving camera 9. And in between, nothing. No headlights, no vehicles, just empty road. I rewound camera 10 again and watched it in real time, starting from 23:11:34, the exact moment the convoy left camera 9. I sat there with my eyes locked on the screen, watching the empty road. At 23:13:22, the feed flickered. It wasn't a glitch. The image didn't freeze or pixelate. It flickered, like someone had turned the lights off and on in the span of a single frame. The timestamp jumped forward. 23:13:22 to 23:13:38. 16 seconds. I paused the video and backed it up frame by frame. At 23:13:21, the road was clear, lit by infrared from the camera. At 23:13:22, the screen went dark for a single frame. Not black, dark, like the camera had stopped receiving light. Then, at 23:13:38, the feed returned. Same road, same angle, but 16 seconds had passed. I checked camera 11, same thing. At 23:13:22, the feed flickered and jumped to 23:13:38. 16 seconds missing. I checked camera 12. Flicker, jump. 16 seconds gone. I felt cold. I checked camera 8, which covered a section of road further south, and camera 14, which watched the approach to test site Alpha. No flicker, no gap, just continuous footage. Only the cameras between waypoint 2 and the intersection had lost time. And during that same 16-second window, 4 trucks carrying 8 personnel had vanished from the road, reappeared, and continued as if nothing had happened. I keyed the radio. Vickers surveillance. I've reviewed the footage. There's a discrepancy. What kind of discrepancy? All 3 cameras covering the stretch between waypoint 2 and the intersection show a 16-second gap in their recordings. The timestamp jumps forward. No footage during that window. Silence on the other end. Then, are the cameras malfunctioning? I don't think so. The footage before and after the gap is clean, and all 3 cameras show the exact same gap at the exact same time. That's not a malfunction, that's something else. Stand by. I sat there staring at the monitors. My hands were shaking. I poured more coffee and forced myself to drink it even though my stomach felt tight. 5 minutes later, Vickers came back on the radio. Surveillance, I need you to secure those recordings. Copy them to an external drive and lock them in the evidence locker. Don't overwrite anything. Copy. What's going on? I don't know yet, but someone's going to want to see this. I spent the next hour copying the footage to a portable hard drive. I logged every file, noted the timestamps, and wrote a detailed summary of the gap. When I finished, I locked the drive in the steel cabinet we used for sensitive materials and logged the storage in the security database. At 01:30, Vickers called again. The drivers are being interviewed. Base Command wants a full technical review of the camera system. You're going to get a visit from the IT team in the morning. Understood. Caleb, one more thing. Don't talk about this outside the control room, not with anyone. This stays internal until we know what happened. Copy. The rest of my shift passed in silence. I watched the monitors, logged routine movements, and tried not to think about 16 missing seconds. But every time I glanced at camera 10, I saw that dark frame in my mind. The moment when the light disappeared and the road ceased to exist. At 06 o'clock, I clocked out and walked to my car in the parking lot. The sun was rising over the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. Everything looked normal, clean, safe, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had broken during the night, and we hadn't realized it yet. I drove to my apartment in Toul and tried to sleep. I managed 2 hours before my mind dragged me back awake. I kept seeing the convoy rolling down that empty road, headlights steady, and then the flicker. The darkness. The jump. At noon, I got a text from Vickers. IT team is reviewing the system. No preliminary findings yet. Stay available. I texted back, copy. That evening, I returned to Dugway for my next shift. When I walked into the control room, there were 3 people waiting for me. 2 men in Air Force uniforms and a woman in civilian clothes carrying a tablet. Vickers stood behind them, arms crossed. The woman stepped forward. Caleb, I'm Dr. Reese. I'm with the Technical Evaluation Division. These are Captain Munoz and Sergeant Drake from Base Security. We need to ask you some questions about last night. Okay. Walk us through what you saw. Start from the moment the convoy entered the base. I went through it step by step. The convoy's arrival, the tracking through each camera, the delay, the gap in the footage. I kept my tone neutral, factual, and didn't speculate. When I finished, Dr. Reese made a few notes on her tablet. You reviewed the footage multiple times? She asked. Yes. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. And you're certain the gap occurred at 23:13:22 across all 3 cameras? Positive. Same timestamp, same duration, 16 seconds. Captain Munoz spoke up. Did you notice any other anomalies that night? Power fluctuations, radio interference, unusual activity on other cameras? No, everything else was normal. What about environmental factors? Weather, wildlife, aircraft? Clear night, no wind, no animals on the road. I didn't see or hear any aircraft. Sergeant Drake leaned forward. Did the drivers say anything when they checked in at the gate? I didn't speak to them directly. Gate control handled the check-in. Dr. Reese tapped her tablet. We've reviewed the camera system. The hardware is functioning normally. No evidence of tampering, no malware, no power interruptions during the gap. The drives show a clean record except for that 16-second window, which is missing from all 3 units simultaneously. That's not possible, I said. We know. That's why we're here. Vickers stepped forward. We're also conducting medical evaluations on the convoy personnel. All 8 of them are reporting the same thing. No memory of the time between waypoint 2 and the intersection. Some are describing a sensation of discontinuity, like waking up mid-sentence. Jesus, I muttered. We need you to stay quiet about this, Reese said. This is now a classified incident. You're not to discuss it with anyone outside this room. If you're approached by media or civilians asking questions, you refer them to Base Public Affairs. Clear? Clear. She handed me a document. Read this and sign. It's a standard non-disclosure agreement. I read through it. The language was dense, but the message was simple. Talk about this and face federal charges. I signed. Good, Dr. Reese said. We'll be monitoring the camera system for the next week. If anything similar happens, you report it immediately. No delays. Understood. They left. Vickers stayed behind and sat down across from me. You okay? I don't know. Are you going to tell me what you think happened? I can't, because I don't know. But I've been working this base for 12 years and I've never seen anything like this. Do you think it was intentional? Like someone hacked the system? If they did, they're better than anyone we've got. Dr. Reese's team is top tier. If they can't find evidence of intrusion, there probably isn't any. Then what's left? He stood and walked to the door. That's the question, isn't it? I worked my shift alone that night, eyes glued to camera 10. Every vehicle that passed through, I logged with obsessive detail. Every flicker of light, every shadow, every movement. But nothing unusual happened. The cameras recorded smooth, continuous footage. The timestamps marched forward without gaps. At 03 Hunquak, I got a call from Dr. Reese. "Caleb, I need you to pull up archive footage from the past 6 months. Cameras 9, 10, 11, and 12. I want to check for similar anomalies." "Copy. That'll take some time." "I know. Start with the last 30 days and work backward. If you find anything, flag it immediately." I spent the next 4 hours reviewing footage. I scrubbed through dozens of convoys, supply runs, and patrol vehicles. I checked every timestamp, every transition between cameras. Most of it was clean. But at 0447, I found something. August 14th. A single vehicle, a Humvee, traveling south on the same road. It passed through camera 9 at 2:33:12. It appeared on camera 10 at 02:33:44. The gap was smaller, only 4 seconds. But it was there. A flicker in the feed, a jump in the timestamp. I flagged it and kept searching. Over the next hour, I found 3 more incidents. July 22nd, a supply truck. 6-second gap. June 5th, a patrol vehicle. 8 seconds. May 19th, a convoy of 2 trucks. 11 seconds. None of them matched the duration of the October 12th incident. But they all showed the same pattern. Vehicles traveling on that specific stretch of road, a brief flicker in the footage, and missing time. I called Dr. Reese. "I've got something. Send it to my secure email. Include timestamps and vehicle IDs if you have them." I sent the files and wrote up a summary. When I finished, I sat back and stared at the monitors. 4 incidents in 5 months, all on the same road, all with the same gap pattern. And we hadn't noticed until now because the gaps were short enough to overlook. At 06 Aqua, I clocked out. I didn't go home. I drove west on Highway 196, then turned onto a dirt access road that ran parallel to the northern boundary of Dugway. It was public land technically, managed by the BLM. I parked on a rise that gave me a view of the test range and the stretch of road where the convoy had lost 16 seconds. The sun was up now, the desert bathed in gold light. I raised binoculars and scanned the area. The road looked normal. Flat, straight, empty. Sagebrush lined the shoulders. Gravel and dust, nothing out of place. But something had happened there, multiple times, and whatever it was getting stronger. I stayed on that rise for an hour, watching. A few vehicles passed on the distant road inside the base. None of them were convoys. At 0730, my phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Reese. "Good work. This changes things. Come to Building 52 at 1400 for briefing." I texted back, "Copy." I drove back to Tool and forced myself to eat breakfast. Then I tried to sleep again, but my mind wouldn't settle. I kept thinking about the drivers. 8 people, all with the same gap in their memory, all describing the same sensation of discontinuity. What had they seen during those 16 seconds? Or had they seen anything at all? At 14 HUD, I walked into Building 5220 and was directed to a conference room on the 2nd floor. Dr. Reese was there with Captain Munoz, Sergeant Drake, and 2 others I didn't recognize. One was an older man in a suit, the other was a younger woman with dark hair and a name tag that read, Dr. Lynn, Neurology. Dr. Reese gestured to an empty chair. "Sit. We've got a lot to cover." She pulled up a presentation on the screen at the front of the room. The first slide showed a map of Dugway with the stretch of road between Waypoint 2 and the intersection highlighted in red. "This is our focus area," she said. "Based on the footage Caleb recovered, we've identified 5 separate incidents over the past 5 months, all occurring on this specific stretch of road. The duration of the gaps ranges from 4 seconds to 16 seconds. The pattern is consistent. Vehicles enter the zone, the camera feed flickers, time jumps forward, and the vehicles reappear as if nothing happened. The older man in the suit spoke. Have we ruled out technical failure? Yes. We've tested the cameras, the recording systems, and the network infrastructure. Everything is functioning within normal parameters. There's no evidence of hardware malfunction or external interference. What about the drivers? Dr. Lin answered. We've completed neurological evaluations on all 8 personnel from the October 12th convoy. Brain scans show no abnormalities. Memory tests indicate normal cognitive function. But when asked to recount the trip in detail, all of them describe the same gap. They remember approaching waypoint 2. They remember arriving at the intersection, but they cannot recall the transition. Retrograde amnesia? The man asked. Possibly, but retrograde amnesia typically results from trauma or injury. These individuals show no signs of physical trauma, no elevated stress markers, and no indication of psychological distress beyond confusion about the missing time. Captain Munoz leaned forward. What about environmental factors? Electromagnetic interference, weather phenomena, seismic activity? We've checked. No unusual readings on any front. The night of October 12th was clear, calm, and seismically quiet. Dr. Reese switched to the next slide. It showed a graph with 5 data points, each representing one of the incidents. The x-axis showed dates. The y-axis showed the duration of the gaps in seconds. Notice the trend, she said. The gaps are increasing in duration. August 14th, 4 seconds. July 22nd, 6 seconds. June 5th, 8 seconds. May 19th, 11 seconds. October 12th, 16 seconds. That's not random, I said. No, it's not. Whatever is causing this, it's escalating. The older man closed his folder. What's your recommendation? We install additional monitoring equipment on that stretch of road. High-resolution cameras, electromagnetic sensors, infrared imaging, seismic detectors. We also implement a new protocol. Any vehicle traveling that route must have a dash-mounted camera and a GPS tracker with second-by-second logging. And if another incident occurs, then we'll have more data and hopefully some answers. The meeting ended. As everyone filed out, Dr. Reese pulled me aside. You did good work finding those earlier incidents. I want you on the monitoring team. What does that involve? You'll continue your normal shifts, but you'll also have access to the new equipment feeds. If you see anything unusual, you report directly to me. No intermediaries. Copy. She handed me a business card with her direct number. Call me any time, day or night. I took the card and left. Outside, the sun was high and bright, the sky a perfect blue. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching from above, waiting for the next convoy to roll down that empty road. And when it did, I'd be watching too. The new equipment arrived 3 days later. A team of technicians spent 48 hours installing cameras, sensors, and monitoring stations along the stretch of road between Waypoint 2 and the intersection. They mounted high-resolution cameras on portable towers, each one positioned to overlap coverage with the next. They buried seismic sensors in the ground to detect vibrations. They set up electromagnetic field detectors at 100-yard intervals. Dr. Reese walked me through the new system during a briefing on October 18th. We stood in the control room, looking at 6 additional monitors that had been added to my workstation. These feeds are separate from the base security system, she explained. They record to dedicated drives with redundant backup. If there's another gap, we'll have multiple data sources to analyze. What am I looking for? I asked. Anything that doesn't fit. Visual anomalies, sensor spikes, timing irregularities. If you see something, document it immediately and call me. What about convoys? Are we still running them through this area? Yes, we can't shut down operations because of an unexplained phenomenon. But every vehicle is now equipped with dash cameras and GPS trackers. The drivers have been briefed on the situation and instructed to report any unusual experiences. Do they know what happened to the October convoy? They know there was a technical incident. They don't know the details. I nodded. The less people knew, the better. Information like this had a way of spreading, and once it did, panic followed. That night, I started my shift at 22. The control room felt different now. More crowded. More surveillance. More eyes watching that stretch of road. I settled into my chair and ran a systems check on the new equipment. All cameras operational, all sensors online, all feeds recording. At 2334, a supply truck entered the road from the south, heading toward Test Site Alpha. I watched it pass through Camera 9, then tracked it on the new high-resolution feed from Tower 1. The truck moved steadily, headlights cutting through the dark. I could see the driver's silhouette through the windshield. The truck passed Tower 1 and moved into the coverage zone for Tower 2. Normal. No flicker. No gap. The timestamp advanced smoothly. 23:35:12, 23:35:13, 23:35:14. At 23:35:45, the truck reached the intersection and turned north. I logged it and exhaled. Clean run. Over the next week, I monitored 14 vehicles through that section of road. All of them passed without incident. No gaps, no anomalies. The footage was continuous. The sensors showed normal readings, and the drivers reported nothing unusual. On October 26th, Dr. Reese called me into her office. It was a small room on the third floor of Building 5220, lined with filing cabinets and technical manuals. She sat behind a desk covered in printed reports and data charts. "Sit," she said. "I want your honest assessment. Do you think we're wasting time?" "What do you mean?" "We've had 2 weeks of clean data. No gaps, no anomalies, nothing. Some people are starting to argue that the October incident was a one-time glitch and we're overreacting." "What do you think?" "I think the pattern is too consistent to ignore. 5 incidents over 5 months, all escalating in duration. That's not random, that's something building." "I agree," she nodded. "Good, because I'm about to make a recommendation that's going to upset a lot of people." "What kind of recommendation?" "I want to run a test. Send a convoy through that section of road under controlled conditions. Full monitoring, medical personnel on standby, emergency protocols in place. If something happens, we'll be ready to document it and respond." "You want to bait it?" "I want to understand it, and the only way to do that is to create the conditions that trigger the phenomenon." "When?" "November 2nd. That gives us a week to prepare. I need you on the monitoring team. You'll be in the control room with direct access to all feeds." "Copy." She handed me a folder. "These are the protocols. Read them tonight. If you have questions, call me." I took the folder and left. That evening, I sat in my apartment and went through the documents. The test convoy would consist of 3 vehicles: a lead truck carrying monitoring equipment, a second truck with a medical team, and a trailing vehicle with security personnel. Each vehicle would have multiple cameras, GPS trackers, and communication systems. The drivers would be volunteers from base personnel, all of them briefed on the risks. The goal was simple: drive through the gap zone and document everything. If a gap occurred, the convoy would stop immediately, and the medical team would conduct on-site evaluations. It felt reckless, but I also understood the logic. We needed data, and sitting around waiting for another random incident wasn't going to give us answers. On November 2nd, I arrived at the control room at 20 Huntway, 2 hours before the test convoy was scheduled to depart. Dr. Reese was already there with Captain Munoz and a team of technicians. The atmosphere was tense. People moved quietly, checking equipment, running diagnostics, and double-checking protocols. At 21:45, the convoy assembled at the staging area near the south gate. I watched them on camera 4. 3 trucks, headlights on, engines idling. The lead truck had Test 1 painted on the door in white stencil. The second truck was marked Test 2. The third was Test 3. Dr. Reese stood behind me, arms crossed. All vehicles are ready. Medical team is standing by. Emergency response is on alert. Let's do this. At 22 Shaw, the convoy rolled out. I tracked them through camera 5 as they passed the gate. Normal, steady. The lead truck maintained 30 miles per hour. The others followed at 50-yard intervals. At 22:08, they passed through camera 9, entering the gap zone. I switched to the high-resolution feed from Tower 1. The lead truck moved into frame, headlights bright. The driver visible through the windshield. A man in his 40s, calm expression, hands on the wheel. The truck passed Tower 1 at 22:09:03. I noted the timestamp. The second truck followed at 22:09:17. The third truck at 22:09:31. I watched Tower 2. The lead truck should appear in approximately 45 seconds. The seconds ticked by. 22:09:30, 22:09:35, 22:09:40. At 22:09:48, the feed from Tower 2 flickered. Not a glitch. Not a freeze. A flicker. The image went dark for a single frame, then returned. The timestamp jumped. 22:09:48 to 22:10:11. 23 seconds. We have a gap, I said, my voice tight. Tower 2, 23 seconds. Dr. Reese leaned over my shoulder. Check the other feeds. I switched to Tower 3. Flicker, jump. 22:09:48 to 22:10:11. 23 seconds. I checked Tower 1. Same. Tower 4. Same. All of them. Synchronized, losing the exact same block of time. All towers are showing the same gap, I reported. 23 seconds starting at 22:09:48. Dash cameras? I pulled up the feeds from the vehicles themselves. The lead truck's camera showed the road ahead, headlights illuminating sagebrush and gravel. At 22:09:48, the feed went black. Not static, not pixelated, black. At 22:10:11, it returned. Same road, same view, but 23 seconds had passed. I checked the GPS logs. At 22:09:48, the lead truck was at coordinates 40:1542 DSN, 113.821 W. At 22:10:11, it was at 40:1506 DGN, 113.798 DW. The truck had traveled approximately 0.3 miles during the gap. They kept moving, I said. What? The GPS shows continuous movement through the gap. They didn't stop, they just went dark. Dr. Reese grabbed the radio. Test convoy, this is control, report status. Static hissed back at us. She tried again. Test 1, do you copy? More static. Then a voice, distorted and faint. Control, something. Test 1, say again, you're breaking up. The static cleared. The driver's voice came through, shaky but audible. Control, this is Test 1. We just passed the intersection. We're okay, but something happened. Describe it. I don't know how to describe it. One second I was on the straight road, the next I was at the turn. I don't remember the transition. It felt like waking up mid-drive. Copy. Proceed to the designated stop point and hold position. Medical team is en route. Dr. Reese turned to Captain Munoz. Get the response team out there. I want those drivers evaluated immediately. Munoz grabbed his radio and started issuing orders. I sat at my workstation, staring at the monitors. The convoy had stopped at a pullout near Test Site Alpha. I could see all 3 trucks, headlights still on, doors opening. Personnel climbed out, moving slowly, like they were disoriented. The medical team arrived within minutes. I watched them approach the drivers, talking to them, shining lights in their eyes, checking vitals. One of the drivers sat down on the ground, his head in his hands. Dr. Reese's phone rang. She answered, listened, then hung up. All 3 drivers are reporting the same thing. No memory of the gap. But this time they're also describing physical symptoms. Dizziness, nausea, a sensation of pressure in their ears. That's new, I said. I know. Get me the dash camera footage from all 3 vehicles. I want to see every frame before, during, and after the gap. I copied the files and transferred them to Dr. Reese's workstation. She pulled up the lead truck's footage and played it frame by frame. At 22:09:47, the road was clear, lit by headlights. At 22:09:48, the screen went black. No transition, no fade, just black. She advanced 1 frame. Still black. Another frame, black. She kept advancing, frame by frame, through the entire 23-second gap. Every frame was the same. Pure black, no light, no data. At 22:10:11, the road returned. Same angle, same view. The truck had traveled nearly a quarter mile, but the camera had recorded nothing. It's not a malfunction, she said. The camera was running. It just couldn't capture anything during that window. Why? I don't know. But whatever happened, it affected every recording device simultaneously. Cameras, GPS, even the radio. She pulled up the GPS data and overlaid it on a map. During the gap, the trucks had followed the road perfectly. No deviations, no stops, no course corrections. They'd driven as if on autopilot. They were conscious during the gap, I said. They had to be, or they would have crashed. Maybe. Or maybe something else was controlling the vehicles. I felt a chill run down my spine. You can't be serious. I'm not speculating. I'm analyzing data, and the data doesn't make sense. Drivers with no memory of driving, vehicles that move perfectly along a route without conscious input, recording devices that go dark for 23 seconds without failing. None of that fits any known technical or medical explanation. Captain Munoz walked over. Medical team is transporting the drivers to the base clinic for full evaluations. They're stable, but disoriented. One of them is vomiting. Get me the results as soon as they're done, Dr. Reese said. Over the next 2 hours, we reviewed every second of footage, every sensor reading, every data point. The electromagnetic field detectors had spiked during the gap, registering levels 300% above baseline. The seismic sensors had detected faint vibrations, rhythmic and regular like a pulse, and the infrared cameras had recorded something strange, a drop in ambient temperature across the entire gap zone, from 52 degrees to 38 degrees in less than a second. Heat doesn't vanish like that, one of the technicians said. Not naturally. Dr. Reese stared at the data. No, it doesn't. At 1:30, the medical team sent their report. All 3 drivers showed elevated cortisol levels, consistent with acute stress. Brain scans revealed unusual activity in the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory formation, but there was no evidence of physical injury or neurological damage. Dr. Reese read the report and closed her laptop. We're not getting answers. We're just accumulating more questions. What now? I asked. Now, we analyze everything and hope we can find a pattern. Because if this happens again, and the duration keeps increasing, we're going to have a serious problem. She left. I stayed in the control room, watching the monitors. The road looked empty and quiet, lit by the faint glow of tower-mounted cameras. But I knew that stretch of asphalt was anything but ordinary. Something was happening there. Something that could make time skip, erase memory, and turn darkness into a void. And whatever it was getting stronger. 3 days later, on November 5th, I was at home when Dr. Reese called. "Caleb, I need you to come in. We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Another gap. This one wasn't planned. A civilian truck passed through the zone about an hour ago. The driver called 911 from the intersection, reporting lost time and confusion. Highway Patrol brought him to the base for questioning. I'm on my way." I drove to Dugway and went straight to Building 5220. Dr. Reese met me in the hallway and led me to an interview room on the first floor. Through a one-way mirror, I could see a man in his 50s sitting at a table with a cup of coffee. He looked tired and rattled. "His name is Frank Holloway," Dr. Reese said. "He's a long-haul driver out of Salt Lake. He was passing through on Highway 196 when he decided to take a shortcut across baseland using an access road. He didn't know it was restricted." "How did he get through the gate?" "He didn't. He used an old service road that runs parallel to the main perimeter. It connects to the stretch where the gaps occur." "What did he experience?" "Same thing as the convoy drivers. He remembers entering the road. He remembers reaching the intersection, but he has no memory of the drive in between. He said it felt like someone cut a piece out of his life." I watched Holloway through the glass. He rubbed his face and took a sip of coffee. His hands were shaking. "What are we going to do with him?" I asked. "We're going to debrief him, run a medical evaluation, and then release him with a non-disclosure agreement. But Caleb, this is a problem. If a civilian experienced a gap, that means the phenomenon isn't confined to military convoys. It's affecting anyone who drives through that zone." "How long was his gap?" 29 seconds. My stomach dropped. "It's escalating faster." "I know. Which means we need to figure out what's causing this before someone gets hurt." She opened the door to the interview room and gestured for me to follow. Inside, Holloway looked up at us with bloodshot eyes. "Mr. Holloway, I'm Dr. Reese. This is Caleb. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your experience." "I already told the cops everything I know." "I understand, but we need to be thorough. Can you describe what you felt during the drive?" Holloway set down his coffee and leaned back in the chair. "I was tired. It was late. I saw the access road and thought it would shave some time off my route. I turned onto it and started driving. The road was empty. No other vehicles. Just darkness and sagebrush." "What happened next?" "I remember seeing a sign, waypoint marker or something. And then nothing. Just blank. The next thing I knew, I was at an intersection, slowing down, and I didn't know how I got there. I checked my watch. Almost 30 seconds had passed, but I couldn't remember any of it." "Did you see anything unusual? Lights, objects, movement?" "No, just darkness. And then it was like I blinked, and I was somewhere else." Dr. Reese made a note. "Did you feel anything physical? Dizziness, nausea, pressure?" "My ears felt weird, like they needed to pop. And I had a headache for about 10 minutes after." "Have you ever experienced anything like this before?" "No, never. I've been driving for 30 years. I've seen a lot of strange things on the road, but nothing like this." We asked a few more questions, but Holloway didn't have any additional information. Dr. Reese thanked him and stepped out. I followed her into the hallway. "He's clean," she said. "No drugs, no alcohol, no medical history that would explain memory loss, which means he experienced the exact same phenomenon as the convoy drivers. What do? We close that road, effective immediately. I'm recommending to Base Command that the entire stretch between Waypoint 2 and the intersection be declared off-limits until we understand what's happening." Will they agree? They don't have a choice. If civilians are wandering into the gap zone and losing time, we have a liability issue. And if the duration keeps increasing, someone's going to have an accident. She was right. But closing the road wouldn't stop the phenomenon. It would just prevent people from experiencing it. Whatever was causing the gaps would still be there, lurking on that empty stretch of desert, waiting. And I had a feeling it wasn't going to wait much longer. The road was closed on November 6th. Base Command issued an order restricting all traffic on the stretch between Waypoint 2 and the intersection. Barriers were placed at both ends, warning signs were posted, and patrols were instructed to monitor the area for unauthorized vehicles. Dr. Reese's team continued their surveillance, but without traffic there was nothing to observe. For 2 weeks, the gap zone sat empty and quiet. The cameras recorded nothing but desert wind and the occasional coyote. The sensors showed baseline readings. The road looked harmless. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were just waiting for the next incident. And on November 21st, that feeling proved correct. I was in the control room at 23:30 when the sensors started spiking. No vehicles on the road, no personnel in the area. But the electromagnetic field detectors were registering elevated levels, climbing fast. I called Dr. Reese. "We have activity in the gap zone. EMF readings are climbing. No visual contact. I'm on my way. Keep monitoring and record everything." I switched to the high-resolution feeds from the towers. The road looked empty. Sagebrush swayed in the wind. The sky was clear, stars bright. But the sensors kept climbing. 2.3 milligauss, 4.7, 8.1. At 23:34, the temperature sensors dropped. 51 degrees to 42 degrees in 5 seconds, then 42 degrees to 35 degrees. The cold spread across the entire zone, as if someone had opened a freezer door in the middle of the desert. I grabbed the radio. "All units, this is surveillance. We have an environmental anomaly in the gap zone. Temperature drop and EMF spike, no visible cause. Stand by." The infrared cameras picked up something. A cold spot, circular, about 20 feet in diameter, hovering above the road at the center of the zone. It wasn't a vehicle. It wasn't solid. It was just cold, a void of heat suspended in the air. Dr. Reese burst through the door, still pulling on her jacket. "Show me." I pointed to the infrared feed. She leaned over my shoulder and stared at the screen. "What is that?" "I don't know. It appeared about a minute ago. The sensors are going crazy." The cold spot began to move. It drifted south along the road, slow and steady, like it was following the path that vehicles would normally take. As it moved, the temperature sensors tracked its position. Wherever it went, the air turned cold. "Is it solid?" Dr. Reese asked. "Negative. Visual cameras show nothing. Only infrared is picking it up." The cold spot reached the position where the gaps had occurred during previous incidents. It stopped. The EMF reading spiked to 15.7 milligauss. And then the cameras flickered. Every feed, every tower, every dash camera we had in storage, all of them flickered at the exact same moment. The timestamp jumped forward, 23:37:22 to 23:38:04. 42 seconds. "Jesus," I muttered. Dr. Reese grabbed the radio. "All units, we just experienced a 42-second gap. No personnel in the area. Repeat, no personnel in the area. The phenomenon occurred without any vehicles present. The cold spot was gone. The temperature sensors returned to normal. The EMF readings dropped. The road looked empty again, like nothing had happened. But I knew it had, and this time the gap had happened on its own, without a trigger, without a convoy, just the phenomenon, manifesting in the desert night. Dr. Reese sat down in the chair next to me. It's not reactive, it's active. What do you mean? We thought the gaps were triggered by vehicles passing through the zone, but this proves otherwise. The phenomenon is happening on its own. The vehicles are just witnesses, or targets, maybe. She pulled out her phone and made a call. I couldn't hear the other end, but her side of the conversation was tense. Yes, sir. 42 seconds. No personnel, no vehicles. I understand, sir, but we need more resources. Yes, sir. I'll prepare a full report. She hung up and rubbed her eyes. They're not taking this seriously. Command thinks it's a technical glitch. They want another technical review before they authorize additional funding. It's not a glitch. I know, but try convincing someone who hasn't seen the footage. Over the next 3 days, the phenomenon repeated. November 22nd, a 37-second gap at 0214. November 23rd, a 51-second gap at 0422. Each time, the cold spot appeared, drifted along the road, stopped at the center of the zone, and triggered the gap. And each time, the duration increased. Dr. Reese assembled a team of scientists from Hill Air Force Base and the University of Utah. Physicists, engineers, meteorologists, anyone who might have an explanation. They reviewed the data, ran simulations, and tested every theory they could think of. Atmospheric anomaly, dismissed. The weather conditions didn't support it. Seismic activity, dismissed. No earthquakes or tremors detected. Equipment failure, dismissed. The gaps occurred across multiple independent systems. Electromagnetic interference, possible, but no known source could produce the field strength we were measuring. On November 25th, one of the physicists, a man named Dr. Santos, presented a theory that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. What if it's not environmental? He said. What if it's spatial? Dr. Reese frowned. Explain. Every phenomenon we've documented shows characteristics of a localized distortion. Time gaps, temperature drops, electromagnetic spikes, memory loss. These aren't symptoms of weather or equipment failure. They're symptoms of space-time manipulation. You're talking about theoretical physics. I'm talking about observed data. We have repeatable, measurable evidence of an event that disrupts the normal flow of time in a confined area. The only explanations that fit involve principles we don't fully understand. Wormholes, quantum fluctuations, dimensional rifts. That's not possible. Neither are 42-second gaps in camera footage. Yet, here we are. The room went silent. Dr. Reese stared at the data on the screen. If you're right, what does that mean for us? It means we're observing something that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of physics. And if it keeps escalating, we have no idea what the end point is. That night, I sat alone in the control room, watching the gap zone. The road looked peaceful, empty, safe. But I knew better. Something was building out there. Something that bent the rules of reality and erased moments from existence. At 23:47, the sensors spiked again. I grabbed the radio. "Dr. Reese, we have activity." She was there in minutes. We watched the infrared feed together. The cold spot appeared, larger this time, maybe 40 feet in diameter. It drifted along the road, stopped, and hovered. The cameras flickered. The timestamp jumped. 23:49, 12 to 23:50, 38. 86 seconds. Dr. Reese's face went pale. It's accelerating. What do we do? I don't know, but we're running out of time to figure it out. On November 27th, Dr. Reese made a decision that would change everything. She called a meeting with Base Command and presented her findings. The gaps were real. They were increasing in duration, and they showed no signs of stopping. Her recommendation: evacuate all personnel from the northern test range and establish a 2-mile exclusion zone around the gap area. No vehicles, no personnel, no equipment. Just observation from a safe distance. Base Command rejected the proposal. Too costly, too disruptive, too alarmist. They ordered Dr. Reese to continue monitoring and report any significant changes, but no evacuation was authorized. She came back to the control room that afternoon, angry and frustrated. They don't understand. They think this is just a technical curiosity. They don't see the danger. What are you going to do? I'm going to keep collecting data. And when this thing finally does something catastrophic, I'll have the evidence to prove I was right. That night, the gap zone activated again. But this time it was different. At 22:03, the cold spot appeared, larger than before. The EMF readings climbed past 20 milligauss, higher than any previous measurement. And the temperature drop was extreme, 54 degrees to 28 degrees in less than 3 seconds. The cold spot didn't drift. It expanded. The circle grew wider, stretching across the entire width of the road and into the desert on both sides. On the infrared feed, it looked like a hole opening in the ground, a void spreading outward. "Dr. Reese," I said, my voice tight, "you need to see this." She came over and stared at the screen. "What is that?" "It's expanding. The cold zone is growing." The sensors along the perimeter of the gap zone started triggering. One by one, they registered the cold front moving toward them. The phenomenon was no longer confined to a small stretch of road. It was spreading. At 22:04, the cameras flickered. But this time, the gap lasted longer. The timestamp jumped. 22:417 to 22:06:52. 2 minutes and 35 seconds. When the feed returned, the cold spot was gone. But the damage was done. The sensors showed residual cold across a half-mile radius. The ground temperature had dropped. The air was dense and heavy. Dr. Reese grabbed her phone and called Base Command. "We have a critical situation. The phenomenon just expanded beyond the road. It's affecting a half-mile radius. I need authorization to evacuate the test range immediately." She listened for a moment, then slammed the phone down. They said no. They think it's a sensor malfunction. It's not a malfunction. I know, but they won't listen. Over the next 48 hours, the gaps continued. Each one longer than the last. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes. The cold spot grew larger with each occurrence, and the sensors showed increasing instability in the gap zone. On November 30th, at 03:22 in the morning, the phenomenon reached its peak. I was alone in the control room when the sensors went into alarm mode. Every detector, every camera, every system we had was registering maximum readings. The EMF levels were off the scale. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees across a 2-mile area. I called Dr. Reese. "We have a major event. All sensors are maxed out. The cold zone is expanding rapidly. I'm coming. Don't go near the windows." I didn't understand what she meant until I looked at the monitors. The infrared feed showed the cold spot, but it was no longer circular. It was a massive, irregular void, spreading across the desert like a stain. And at the center, something was forming. A shape, solid, geometric, hovering above the road. I switched to the visual feed. The camera showed nothing, just empty road and darkness. But the infrared showed the shape clearly. It was cylindrical, maybe 30 feet tall and 15 feet wide, suspended in the air without visible support. At 03:24, the cameras flickered. The timestamp jumped. 03:24:03 to 03:38:47. 14 minutes and 44 seconds. When the feed returned, the shape was gone. The cold spot was gone. The sensors dropped back to baseline, and the road looked empty again. Dr. Reese arrived and reviewed the footage. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just stared at the screen, her face unreadable. "What was that?" I finally asked. "I don't know, but it's over." "What do you mean?" "Look at the data. After the 14-minute gap, the sensors stabilized. No more spikes, no more cold spots. Whatever was happening, it stopped." She was right. Over the next week, we monitored the gap zone continuously. No anomalies, no gaps, no cold spots. The road returned to normal, and the phenomenon ceased. On December 8th, Base Command authorized a ground survey of the gap zone. A team of engineers and scientists walked the entire stretch of road, taking measurements, collecting samples, and looking for physical evidence. They found one thing. At the center of the zone, where the shape had appeared, there was a mark on the asphalt. A perfect circle, 3 feet in diameter, with a surface that looked fused and smooth, like glass. The circle was cold to the touch, even in the midday sun. And when they analyzed the material, they found something impossible. The asphalt had been compressed. Not melted, not burned, compressed. The molecular structure showed signs of extreme pressure, the kind you'd find deep underground or in the core of a collapsing star. Dr. Reese filed her final report on December 15th. The phenomenon was classified as unexplained. The gap zone was designated as restricted indefinitely, and the circle on the road was left undisturbed, a permanent reminder of something we couldn't understand. I transferred to a different facility in January. I couldn't stay at Dugway after what I'd seen. Dr. Reese left too. She took a position at a research lab in Colorado, studying atmospheric phenomena. We don't talk about the gaps. We don't need to. But I still think about those missing seconds. The moments when time stopped, memory vanished, and something impossible reached into our world and left a mark. And I wonder if it's really gone, or if it's just waiting for the right moment to come back. My name is Miles. I'm 42 years old, and I've worked in construction for 20 years, most of it in remote locations across the western United States. I've built access roads in Nevada, laid foundation for cell towers in Arizona, and repaired infrastructure in places so isolated you need a satellite phone just to call for help. The work is hard, the hours are long, and the pay is decent enough to keep me coming back. In September of last year, I took a contract at Dugway Proving Ground in western Utah. The job was straightforward: repair and reinforce a section of perimeter road along the northern boundary of the test range. The road had developed cracks and washouts from weather and heavy vehicle traffic, and the Army needed it fixed before winter. My crew consisted of 5 people: me as the foreman, 2 equipment operators named Grant and Hector, and 2 general laborers, Davis and Kim. We arrived on September 18th and set up a temporary work camp about 2 miles from the repair site. The Army provided us with a trailer for equipment storage, a portable generator, and access to water. We worked 6 days a week, dawn to dusk, and had Sundays off. The location was about as remote as you could get. No cell service, no traffic, just endless desert, salt flats, and mountains in the distance. Grant was my right hand on the job. He's 38, built like a truck, and has been operating heavy equipment since he was 20. He drove the excavator and handled most of the grading work. Hector ran the dump truck and managed material transport. Davis and Kim did manual labor, rebar placement, concrete pouring, cleanup. Good crew, professional, no drama. The first 2 weeks went smooth. We excavated damaged sections of road, hauled in gravel for the base layer, and poured new concrete. The weather stayed clear, and the equipment ran without issues. By October 2nd, we were ahead of schedule. That night changed everything. We'd worked late to finish pouring a 200-foot section before the concrete set. By the time we cleaned the tools and shut down the equipment, it was past 8 p.m. The sun had dropped below the mountains, and the sky was turning that deep blue you get right before full dark. Grant and I were loading the excavator onto the flatbed trailer when he stopped and pointed west. "You see that?" I looked up. A single white light hung in the sky above the salt flats, maybe 3 or 4 miles out. It wasn't moving, it wasn't blinking, just a steady point of light, brighter than a star, but smaller than the moon. "Probably a plane," I said. "Planes don't hover." He was right. The light wasn't traveling. It just sat there, stationary, like someone had nailed it to the sky. Hector walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. "What are we looking at?" "That light," Grant said. "It's not moving." We stood there watching it. After about 30 seconds, the light began to change. It grew brighter, pulsing gently, like a heartbeat. Then it split. Not gradually. Not like something breaking apart. It divided cleanly into 3 separate lights, each one identical in size and brightness. They formed a perfect triangle, spaced evenly, maybe 50 feet apart from each other. "What the hell?" Davis muttered. The 3 lights hung there for a moment, perfectly still. Then they began to move. Not together. Independently. The top light drifted higher. The left light moved west. The right light moved east. They separated slowly, widening the triangle until they were maybe 200 feet apart. Then they stopped. I felt a strange pressure in my chest. Not pain, just pressure, like someone was pushing on my sternum from the inside. I glanced at Grant. He had his hand on his chest, too. "You feel that?" he asked. "Yeah." The lights held their positions for another 10 seconds. Then they reversed course. They moved back toward each other, closing the triangle, until they met at the center point. When they touched, they merged into a single light again. The brightness flared for half a second, then dimmed back to its original intensity. The whole sequence took maybe 90 seconds. "Did we just see that?" Kim asked. "We saw it," I said. The light resumed its original position and hung there, motionless. We watched it for another 5 minutes, but it didn't move again. Eventually, I told everyone to finish loading the trailer so we could head back to camp. As we worked, I kept glancing at the sky. The light stayed where it was. No movement, no changes, just that steady white glow against the darkening blue. Grant climbed into the cab of the excavator and turned the key. The engine didn't start. He tried again. Nothing, not even a click. He climbed out, opened the hood, and checked the battery connections. "Everything looks fine. Try it again." He got back in and turned the key. This time the engine turned over and caught. He let it idle for a minute, then shut it down and climbed out, frowning. That's never happened before. Could be a loose connection. Maybe. We finished loading and drove back to camp in 2 vehicles, my truck pulling the flatbed with the excavator, and Hector's truck with the crew. The light followed us. Not physically, but visually. Every time I checked the mirror, it was there, hanging in the same position relative to the horizon. At camp, we unloaded the gear and gathered around the generator-powered lights near the trailer. The crew was quiet. Everyone kept glancing west toward the light. "Anyone want to talk about what we just saw?" Davis asked. "3 lights," Grant said, "or 1 light that split into 3. "That doesn't happen," Kim said. "Lights don't just divide like that. We all saw it, so it does happen." "Could be military," Hector suggested. "We're on a proving ground. They test all kinds of stuff here." "I've seen military flares," I said. "I've seen drones, helicopters, jets. That wasn't any of those." "Then what was it?" I didn't have an answer. We ate a quick dinner of canned stew heated on a camp stove, then turned in early. I lay in my bunk in the trailer, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the generator outside. My chest still felt tight. Not painful, just off, like I'd been holding my breath and couldn't quite catch up. Around midnight, I got up and stepped outside. The camp was dark except for a single light over the trailer door. I walked about 50 yards out into the open desert and looked west. The light was gone. The sky was full of stars, bright and clear, but the light we'd seen earlier was no longer there. I scanned the horizon looking for any trace of it. Nothing. Just empty sky. I went back inside and tried to sleep. I managed a few hours, but my dreams were fragmented and strange. I kept seeing the triangle of lights, expanding and contracting, like something breathing. The next morning, October 3rd, we returned to the work site. Grant started the excavator without any trouble. The engine fired up clean, and the hydraulics responded normally. We spent the day grading a new section of road and laying rebar for the next concrete pour. Around 3 p.m., a white truck with government plates pulled up to the site. A man in his 50s climbed out, wearing khakis and a base security jacket. He walked over to me and introduced himself as Rawlings, site supervisor for perimeter operations. "How's the work going?" he asked. "On schedule. We should finish this section by Friday." He nodded. "Good. I wanted to check in and make sure you're following the safety protocols. This area can be unpredictable. We've had no issues. That's good. But if you see anything unusual, you report it immediately. Unauthorized aircraft, vehicles, personnel, anything." I hesitated. "What about lights?" He looked at me. "What kind of lights?" "Last night, around 8 p.m., we saw a light in the sky to the west. It was stationary, then it split into 3 separate lights. They moved apart, then came back together and merged." Rawlings didn't react. He just stood there looking at me, his expression neutral. "Did you record it?" "No, we were working." "How long did it last?" "Maybe 90 seconds. "And you're sure it wasn't a flare or aircraft?" "I'm sure." He pulled out a small notebook and wrote something down. "I'll file a report. If you see it again, try to document it. Photos, video, anything you can get." "Is that common, lights like that?" "I can't discuss base operations, but I appreciate you reporting it. Stay safe." He got back in his truck and drove off. I watched him go, then turned to Grant, who'd been listening. "That was weird." "He didn't seem surprised," Grant said. "No, he didn't." We finished the day's work and returned to camp. That evening, the crew gathered around the generator lights and talked about the lights. Davis thought it was a military test. Kim wasn't sure. Hector said he didn't want to think about it. Grant and I stayed quiet. At 8:30 p.m., the light appeared again. Same position, same brightness, same steady glow. We all stopped what we were doing and watched. For about a minute, nothing happened. Then, just like the night before, the light split into 3. This time, I was ready. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The 3 lights formed their triangle, drifted apart, held position, then moved back together and merged. The whole sequence took about 90 seconds, just like before. When the light merged back into one, I felt that pressure in my chest again. Stronger this time, like someone was pressing down with both hands. I lowered the phone and took a breath. The pressure faded after a few seconds. Grant walked over. "You got it?" "Yeah." I played back the video. The phone had captured the lights clearly. 3 distinct points in the sky moving independently, then merging. The footage was shaky but usable. "Send that to Rawlings," Grant said. "I don't have his number." "Then we drive to the security office tomorrow and hand it to him in person." I nodded. First thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. The pressure in my chest kept returning, not constantly, but in waves. I'd feel fine for 10 minutes, then the weight would come back, pressing down, making it hard to breathe deeply. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and went outside. The light was still there. It hadn't moved. It just hung in the sky, steady and bright. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. If it was a drone, it would need to land and recharge. If it was a plane, it would drift or make noise. If it was a star or planet, it wouldn't split into 3. So what was it? I watched for another hour. The light didn't change. At 3 a.m., I went back inside and finally managed to fall asleep. The next morning, Grant and I drove to the security office near the main gate. We asked for Rawlings and were told he was on patrol. We left the phone with the receptionist, explained what was on it, and gave her my contact information. She said someone would follow up. We returned to the worksite and spent the day finishing the rebar grid for the next pour. Around 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was Rawlings. "I reviewed your footage," he said. "That's consistent with other reports we've received." "Other reports?" "I can't go into details, but you're not the first to see this phenomenon. I need you to document any future sightings, time, duration, location, and any physical effects you or your crew experience." "Physical effects?" "Dizziness, chest pressure, headaches, anything unusual." "I've been feeling pressure in my chest. Started the first night we saw the lights." "How often?" "It comes and goes, mostly at night." "Anyone else on your crew experiencing it?" "I'll ask." "Do that. And if it gets worse, you go to the base clinic immediately. Understood?" "Understood." He hung up. I turned to Grant. "Rawlings says we're not the first to see this. He wants us to document everything." "Did he say what it is?" "No." That evening, I asked the crew if anyone was feeling unusual physical symptoms. Davis said he'd had a headache the night before. Kim said her ears felt plugged, like she needed to pop them. Hector said he was fine. Grant admitted he'd felt the chest pressure too, but thought it was just stress. At 8:30 p.m., the light appeared again. Same time, same position. This time, I recorded it from the moment it appeared. The light hung in the sky for about 2 minutes, then split into 3. The triangle formed, expanded, held, contracted, and merged. As the lights came together, the pressure in my chest spiked. Sharp. Painful. Like someone had punched me in the sternum. I dropped the phone and doubled over, gasping. Grant grabbed my shoulder. "Miles, you okay?" The pressure released. I straightened up, breathing hard. "I'm fine. It just hit harder this time. We need to get you to the clinic." "I'm fine. It's already gone." But it wasn't fine. Over the next 3 days, the lights appeared every evening at 8:30 p.m. Each time, they performed the same sequence: split, expand, hold, contract, merge. And each time, the pressure in my chest got worse. By October 7th, I was taking ibuprofen just to get through the night. Grant's excavator started having problems too. On October 6th, it stalled 3 times during operation. Grant checked everything: fuel lines, filters, battery, alternator. Everything looked normal, but the machine kept cutting out, always around 8:30 p.m., right when the lights appeared. On October 8th, I called Rawlings and told him the situation was escalating. He said he'd send someone from the technical team to inspect the site. The next afternoon, a woman in civilian clothes arrived with a laptop and a case full of equipment. She introduced herself as Dr. Patel, environmental analyst. "I'm here to take measurements," she said. "Electromagnetic fields, radiation levels, air quality. Mr. Rawlings mentioned you've been experiencing physical symptoms. Chest pressure, it's getting worse. How many people on your crew are affected?" "All of us, to varying degrees." She set up her equipment near the work site and ran a series of tests. After an hour, she packed up and came over to where Grant and I were standing. "Everything's reading normal. No elevated EMF, no radiation. Air quality is within safe limits." "Then, why are we feeling this?" I asked. "I don't know, but I'd like to be here tonight when the lights appear. Can you accommodate that?" "Sure." At 8:30 p.m., Dr. Patel, the crew, and I stood in the open desert near the work site, watching the western sky. Right on schedule, the light appeared. Dr. Patel immediately started taking readings with a handheld device. The light split into three. The triangle formed. As the lights expanded, Dr. Patel's device started beeping rapidly. She looked at the screen, frowned, and tapped it. "This doesn't make sense." "What?" I asked. "I'm getting massive EMF spikes, but they're localized, only within a 50-foot radius of us." "That's not normal." "No, EMF should spread evenly. This is like a bubble." The three lights held their positions. The pressure in my chest built. I could see Grant grimacing, his hand over his heart. Davis sat down on the ground, looking pale. The lights began to contract. As they moved closer to each other, the beeping from Dr. Patel's device got faster. She stared at the screen, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm. "The field strength is climbing. 300 milligauss, 400, 500. Is that bad?" "That's hospital MRI levels. Except we're standing in the middle of the desert." The lights merged. The beeping stopped. The pressure in my chest released like a valve opening. I gasped and took a deep breath. Around me, the crew did the same. Dr. Patel lowered her device. "Did you all feel that?" "Yes," I said. "This is beyond my expertise. I need to report this to Base Command immediately." She packed up her equipment and left. The crew and I stood there in the dark, watching the single light hang in the sky. It didn't move. It didn't fade. It just stayed there, glowing steadily, like it was waiting for something. Grant turned to me. "What do you think it wants?" "I don't know, but I don't think it's done with us yet." The next morning, October 9th, I got a call from Base Command. They were shutting down our work site for 48 hours while they conducted an investigation. We were instructed to stay at the camp and make ourselves available for interviews. 2 hours later, a convoy of 3 vehicles arrived. Military personnel, technical staff, and a man in a suit who introduced himself as Coleman, Special Projects Coordinator. He set up a command tent near our trailer and began interviewing each crew member individually. When it was my turn, Coleman asked me to describe every detail of what we'd witnessed. I went through it chronologically. The first sighting, the splitting pattern, the chest pressure, the equipment failures, Dr. Patel's readings. He took notes without interrupting. "Have you or your crew experienced any other symptoms?" he asked. "Memory gaps, visual disturbances, unusual dreams?" "I've had strange dreams, fragmented, but I thought that was just stress." "Describe them." "I see the triangle of lights, but they're not in the sky. They're close, right above me, and there's a sound like humming, deep and constant. Coleman made a note. Anyone else report similar dreams? I don't know. I haven't asked. We'll check. In the meantime, I need you to understand something. What you're witnessing is a classified phenomenon. You're not to discuss it with anyone outside your crew or base personnel. No social media, no phone calls home, no casual conversation. Violation of this directive will result in legal consequences. Clear? Clear. Good. You'll resume work once we complete our assessment. Over the next 2 days, the military set up monitoring equipment around the worksite. Cameras, sensors, a portable radar unit. They ran tests, took measurements, and documented everything. We weren't allowed near the equipment, but I could see them working from the camp. On October 11th, Coleman called me back to the command tent. We're authorizing you to resume work, but you'll be under observation. If the phenomenon occurs, you're to cease operations immediately and follow evacuation protocols. Evacuation. If the lights appear and the EMF readings spike above 600 milligauss, we pull everyone out. The effects at that level are unpredictable. Has anyone else experienced what we're experiencing? He hesitated. There have been other incidents in this region. Similar patterns. We're still analyzing the data. What do you think it is? I don't speculate. I document and report, that's all. He dismissed me. That afternoon, we returned to the worksite and resumed grading. The military equipment stayed in place, manned by 2 technicians who monitored the feeds from a trailer they'd set up 100 yards away. At 8:30 p.m., the light appeared. The technicians immediately started recording. Grant and I stood next to the excavator watching. The light performed its usual sequence: split, expand, hold, contract, merge. The pressure came and went. The equipment stayed operational. After the lights merged, one of the technicians walked over. Did you feel the pressure? Yes, I said. How intense? Moderate. Not as bad as 2 nights ago. Good. We're getting clean readings. This is exactly what we needed. Over the next week, the pattern repeated every night. Same time, same sequence. The military documented everything. The pressure in my chest became routine, almost predictable. I started taking ibuprofen an hour before the lights appeared, and that helped. On October 18th, something changed. The light appeared at 8:30 p.m. as usual. It hung in the sky for the standard 2 minutes. Then, instead of splitting into 3, it split into 6. 6 lights, arranged in 2 overlapping triangles, like a Star of David. They expanded outward, moving faster than before, until they were spread across a 500-foot span of sky. Then they held position. The pressure in my chest didn't just build, it crushed. I dropped to my knees, unable to breathe. Around me, the crew collapsed. Grant fell against the excavator. Davis hit the ground hard. Kim was on her hands and knees, gasping. The 6 lights began to rotate. Not around each other, but in place, spinning like wheels. The rotation accelerated. Faster, faster. The pressure became unbearable. I felt my vision starting to tunnel. Then the lights snapped back together. All 6 converged on the center point and merged into a single, blindingly bright sphere. The pressure released instantly. I sucked in air, my lungs burning. One of the military technicians was shouting into a radio. "We have a level 6 event. EMF readings at 900 milligauss. Medical support now." A medical team arrived within minutes. They checked vitals on all of us. Elevated heart rates, low blood oxygen, but nothing critical. They administered oxygen and monitored us for an hour before clearing us to return to camp. Coleman arrived shortly after. What you just experienced was an escalation. The phenomenon is intensifying. I'm recommending immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel. What about the work? I asked. The work is suspended indefinitely. You'll be compensated for the full contract, but you're leaving tomorrow morning. And if we refuse, you won't. This is a direct order from base command. That night, I couldn't sleep. The pressure in my chest had returned, not as crushing as before, but constant. A dull weight that wouldn't go away. I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, and thought about the 6 lights rotating in the sky. Around 2 a.m., I got up and walked outside. The camp was quiet. The generator hummed. The military trailer was lit, technicians still monitoring their feeds. I looked west. The light was there, single, steady. But something about it had changed. It looked closer, like it had descended while we weren't watching. I walked toward it, out into the open desert, keeping my eyes on the light. After about 200 yards, I stopped. The light was definitely closer, maybe 2 miles out instead of 4, and it was bigger. Not brighter, just larger, like it was expanding. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Grant walked up beside me. "You see it too?" "Yeah, it's moving." "I know." We stood there watching. The light didn't move in any visible way. It just seemed to occupy more space with each passing minute, like it was inflating. "We should go back," Grant said. "In a minute." The light pulsed, once. A slow, deliberate pulse that sent a wave of pressure across the desert. I felt it pass through me, through my chest, my lungs, my bones. When it was gone, the light had doubled in size. "Miles, we need to go. Now." He grabbed my arm and pulled me back toward the camp. We walked fast, not quite running, but close. When we reached the trailer, I looked back. The light was still growing. It filled a larger section of the sky, no longer a single point but a sphere, glowing and pulsing. I woke Coleman. He came out in his undershirt, looked at the light, and grabbed his radio. "All units, we have a critical expansion event. Evacuate the camp, now." Within 10 minutes, we were packed and moving. The convoy of vehicles rolled out, heading south toward the main base. I rode in Coleman's truck, watching the light in the side mirror. It continued to grow. By the time we reached the perimeter gate, it looked like a second moon. At the security building, Coleman assembled everyone in a conference room. "What you witnessed tonight is unprecedented. The phenomenon has never exhibited this level of activity. We're establishing a 2-mile exclusion zone around the work site. No personnel, no vehicles, no equipment. Everything stays where it is until we understand what's happening." "What do you think it is?" Davis asked. "I don't think, I observe. And what I've observed is a localized spatial anomaly exhibiting properties we can't explain. That's all I can tell you." "Are we in danger?" "You're safe here, but I'm not sending anyone back to that site." We were given temporary quarters in the base lodging facility. The crew stayed together in adjacent rooms. That night, none of us slept. We sat in the common area, drinking coffee and watching news on the TV, though none of the stations mentioned anything about lights over Dugway. At 8:30 p.m., I felt the pressure again. So did the others. We looked at each other, and I knew we were all feeling the same thing. Whatever was happening at the work site, it was reaching us here, 5 miles away. The pressure lasted for exactly 90 seconds, then released. I walked to the window and looked north. In the distance, I could see a faint glow above the horizon. The light was still there, still growing. Coleman appeared at the door. "Pack your things. You're being relocated to a facility in Salt Lake City. Transportation leaves in 1 hour." "What about our equipment?" Grant asked. "It stays, you'll be compensated." "And the light?" "That's no longer your concern." We loaded into a van and left Dugway at 10 p.m. The drive took 2 hours. I watched out the back window as the base disappeared behind us. The glow on the horizon stayed visible for 30 miles before finally fading from view. In Salt Lake City, we were put up in a hotel near the airport. Coleman gave us each an envelope containing a check for the full contract amount, plus a severance bonus. He also gave us documents to sign, non-disclosure agreements, liability waivers, and a statement confirming we'd received medical clearance. "You're free to go," he said. "But remember, what you saw is classified. You don't talk about it. Not to family, not to friends, not to anyone. If you're contacted by media or researchers, you refer them to base public affairs. Clear?" We all signed. The crew dispersed the next day. Davis and Kim flew home to Arizona. Hector caught a bus to Nevada. Grant and I stayed in Salt Lake for a few days, trying to process what had happened. On October 23rd, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. It was Dr. Patel. "Miles, I need to talk to you. Not officially. Off the record." "About what?" "About what's still happening at the work site. Can you meet me?" "When?" "Tonight. There's a diner on 400 South. I'll be there at 7. She hung up. I told Grant. He said he'd come with me. At 7 p.m., we walked into the diner. Dr. Patel was in a back booth, wearing civilian clothes and looking nervous. We sat down across from her. "Thanks for coming," she said. "I shouldn't be doing this, but you deserve to know." "Know what?" "The light is still there. It's been growing for the past week. It's now visible from the main base, and it's affecting equipment across the entire northern test range." "Affecting how?" "Electronic failures, power outages, communication disruptions. The EMF readings are off the scale. Over 2,000 milligauss at the work site." "Jesus." "They've evacuated all personnel from the northern range. It's a dead zone now, and the light is still expanding." "What do they think it is?" "Nobody knows. But there's a theory. Some of the physicists are saying it's a stable wormhole or a spatial tear. Something that's creating a localized distortion in space-time." Grant leaned forward. "That's not possible. It shouldn't be. But the data supports it. The light isn't an object, it's an opening. And whatever's on the other side is leaking through." I felt cold. Leaking what? Energy, radiation, electromagnetic fields. Things we can measure but don't understand. Can they close it? They're trying. But every attempt to approach the site fails. Equipment shuts down within 500 yards. Personnel experience severe physical symptoms. Nobody can get close enough to do anything. "So, what happens now?" "They wait and hope it stabilizes." She finished her coffee and stood. "I've told you everything I can. Be careful. And if you start experiencing symptoms again, even this far away, go to a hospital immediately." She left. Grant and I sat in the booth for a long time, not talking. That night, at 8:30 p.m., I felt the pressure again. Faint, but there. Even in Salt Lake City, 80 miles from Dugway, the phenomenon was reaching me. I packed my things the next morning and drove east. Away from Utah, away from Dugway, away from whatever was growing in that desert. I haven't been back. 3 months later, in January, I got a call from Coleman. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Miles, this is Coleman. I'm calling to inform you that the situation at Dugway has been resolved." "Resolved how?" "The phenomenon ceased on December 8th. The light collapsed and disappeared. The worksite is clear." "Just like that?" "Not exactly. There were consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The ground, where the light was centered, shows unusual properties. Elevated magnetism, altered soil composition, temperature anomalies. We've cordoned off a quarter-mile radius and designated it as restricted indefinitely." "Did you ever figure out what it was?" "No." We documented it. We measured it. We observed its behavior. But we never identified a source or mechanism. For all intents and purposes, it remains unexplained. And you're okay with that. I'm a coordinator, not a scientist. My job is to manage the incident, not solve it. The incident is managed. That's all I need. What about the crew? Are we still under the non-disclosure? Yes, permanently. That hasn't changed. And if I talk, then you face federal prosecution. I don't recommend it. He hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, staring at nothing. Over the next few weeks, I tried to return to normal life. I took another contract in Colorado, building a retaining wall for a highway expansion. The work was routine, the crew was competent, and nothing unusual happened. But every night at 8:30 p.m., I'd feel a faint pressure in my chest, just an echo of what I'd experienced at Dugway, a reminder that something had touched me, and I couldn't shake it. Grant called me in February. You still feel it? Yeah, every night, same time. Me too. It's getting weaker, but it's there. Think it'll ever go away? I don't know. Maybe we're just damaged now. That's a cheerful thought. It's the truth. Whatever that thing was, it left a mark on us. We're connected to it somehow. I don't want to be connected to it. Neither do I. But we don't get to choose. In March, I was working in Wyoming when I got a message from Dr. Patel. She'd sent it through an encrypted email service using an address I didn't recognize. Miles, I'm no longer with Dugway. What I'm about to tell you is based on research I conducted independently after leaving. The light you witnessed was not an isolated event. Similar phenomena have been reported in other remote locations around the world. Nevada, New Mexico, Australia, Kazakhstan. All of them share common characteristics. Remote military sites, electromagnetic anomalies, spatial distortions. I believe these are connected. I believe they're part of a larger pattern. If you're willing to talk, contact me. Patel. I deleted the email and didn't respond. I didn't want to know about a larger pattern. I didn't want to be part of an investigation. I just wanted to forget. But I couldn't forget. In April, I drove back to Utah. Not to Dugway, but close. I took Highway 196 west from Toole and turned onto a dirt road that ran parallel to the northern boundary of the test range. I parked on a rise that gave me a view of the distant work site. Through binoculars, I could see the section of road we'd been repairing. The equipment was gone. The trailer was gone. The site looked abandoned, and in the center of the area there was a dark patch on the ground, maybe 100 feet in diameter, where nothing grew. I sat there for an hour, watching. The sky was clear. No lights, no anomalies, just blue sky and desert. But I could still feel it. That faint pressure in my chest. The connection Grant had talked about. Whatever had been there was gone. But it had left something behind, in the ground, in the air. In me. I drove away and didn't look back. 2 weeks later, Grant called again. Did you hear? Hear what? Coleman's dead, heart attack. They found him in his office at Dugway. When? 3 days ago. He was 52. No history of heart disease. You think it's related? I think we're all carrying something from that site, and some people can't handle it. That's paranoid. Maybe. But Davis called me last week. He's been having chest pains. Saw a cardiologist. They can't find anything wrong, but the pains keep coming. Same time every night? Yeah, 8:30 p.m. I felt cold. This isn't going away, is it? No, I don't think it is. In May, I stopped taking construction contracts. I couldn't focus. Every job felt wrong. Every site felt dangerous. I kept expecting lights to appear in the sky, for the ground to hum, for reality to split open and swallow me. I saw a doctor. He ran tests, blood work, EKG, stress test. Everything came back normal. He prescribed anti-anxiety medication. I took it for a week, then stopped. It didn't help. The pressure in my chest wasn't psychological. It was real, physical, a weight that wouldn't lift. In June, Kim called me. "Miles, I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant." "Congratulations." "Don't. I'm not keeping it." "Why not?" "Because I'm terrified." Every night at 8:30, I feel the pressure. And when I do, I feel something else. Like there's something inside me responding to it. I can't explain it. But I can't bring a child into the world if I'm carrying whatever that thing left in us. "Kim, you don't know that." "I do. I feel it. And I'm not taking chances." She hung up. I sat in my apartment staring at the wall and wondered how many others from the crew were falling apart. In July, I got another email from Dr. Patel. This time I opened it. "Miles, the phenomenon at Dugway resumed on July 3rd. Same location, same pattern. The light split into 3, then 6, then 12. It lasted for 2 hours before collapsing. I'm trying to build a case to get this investigated properly, but I need witnesses. Please contact me. Patel." I didn't respond. I couldn't go back, not even to talk about it. But that night, at 8:30 p.m., the pressure in my chest was stronger than it had been in months. And I knew Dr. Patel was telling the truth. The phenomenon hadn't ended. It had just paused. In August, I finally broke down and called Grant. "I can't do this anymore. I need to know what that thing was." "You won't get an answer." "I have to try." "Then what's your plan?" "I'm going back to Dugway. I'm going to the work site. And I'm going to see for myself what's left." "That's insane." "I know. But I can't live like this, not knowing, not understanding. If you go, I'm coming with you." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. We saw it together. We'll face it together." 2 days later, Grant and I met in Toole and drove west on Highway 196. We reached the access road at dusk and turned north, following the dirt track toward the old work site. The barriers were still up. Warning signs marked the perimeter. We parked a half-mile out and walked in on foot. The site was exactly as I'd seen through binoculars. Abandoned, empty, and at the center, the dark patch on the ground where the light had been. We approached slowly. The air felt heavy, not humid, just dense, like walking through water. My chest tightened with each step. At the edge of the dark patch, we stopped. The ground was fused, smooth, almost glass-like. The soil had been altered at a molecular level, compressed and heated until it became something else. In the center of the patch was a circular depression, about 3 feet in diameter and maybe 6 inches deep. The edges were perfectly smooth. "What do you think it is?" Grant asked. "A mark? A scar? Something that happens when reality tears and seals itself back together." We stood there in silence, watching the sun drop below the mountains. The sky turned orange, then purple, then dark. At 8:30 p.m., the pressure came, stronger than ever, crushing. I dropped to my knees. Grant fell beside me, and then we saw it. 3 lights, rising from the depression in the ground. Not descending from the sky, but emerging from the earth. They lifted slowly, ascending in a perfect triangle, growing brighter as they rose. At 50 feet, they stopped. They hung there, pulsing in unison, and the pressure in my chest synchronized with the pulse. Grant grabbed my arm. "We need to leave." I can't move." The lights began to expand, not splitting, but growing. They filled the sky above us, surrounding us in a dome of light. The pressure became unbearable. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The lights collapsed inward, converged on a single point, and flashed. A pulse of energy so intense I felt it in my bones. Then darkness. When I opened my eyes, Grant was beside me, breathing hard. The lights were gone, the sky was clear, and the pressure in my chest was gone. Completely. For the first time in 10 months, I felt normal. Grant looked at me. "It's over." "How do you know?" "Because I feel it too. Whatever it was, it's done with us." We stood up, looked at the dark patch one last time, and walked back to the truck. As we drove away, I glanced in the mirror. The work site sat empty and quiet, the stars bright above it. And for the first time since September, I didn't feel afraid. I still don't know what we witnessed at Dugway. I don't have answers. I don't have explanations. All I have is the memory of lights that split in 3, a sky that tore open, and a weight in my chest that finally lifted. Grant and I don't talk about it anymore. We've moved on to other jobs, other projects, other lives. But on rare nights when the sky is clear and the stars are bright, I look west and think about that desert. And I wonder if it's still out there, waiting beneath the ground, ready to rise again. I didn't sleep well for weeks after that final visit to the work site. Even though the pressure was gone, the memory of it remained. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 a.m., my hand pressed to my chest, checking for that weight. It was never there, but the reflex remained. In September, exactly 1 year after the first sighting, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note from Dr. Patel. "Miles, this is everything I collected. Camera footage, sensor data, medical records, eyewitness statements from other incidents around the world. I can't publish this. I can't report it through official channels. But I wanted you to have it. You deserve to know you weren't alone, and you deserve to know it's still happening. Patel." I plugged the drive into my laptop. The files were organized by location and date. Nevada, New Mexico, Australia, Kazakhstan. Dozens of incidents spanning decades, different descriptions, different witnesses, but the same core elements. Lights that split apart, crushing pressure, equipment failures, altered ground. One file caught my attention. A report from 1987, written by a geologist working near Groom Lake, Nevada. He described seeing a single light divide into 7 separate points, arranged in a heptagon. The lights remained visible for 3 hours, then collapsed inward and vanished, leaving behind a circular depression in the ground that registered abnormal magnetic readings for years afterward. I read through every file. By the time I finished, it was dawn, and I understood something I hadn't before. The phenomenon wasn't random, it was cyclical. It appeared in waves, separated by years or decades, always in remote locations, always near military installations or test sites. And it always left marks. I called Grant. "Did you get a package?" "Yeah, from Pal. You look through it?" "All of it." "So we're part of a pattern. Looks that way." "Does that make you feel better or worse?" "I don't know. Both, maybe." We met for coffee that afternoon at a diner in Ogden. We sat in a booth and talked through what we'd seen on the drive. Grant had come to the same conclusion I had. The phenomenon was real, it was recurring, and it wasn't going away. "So what do we do?" he asked. "Nothing. We live our lives. We move forward, and we don't let it define us. That's easier said than done. I know. But what's the alternative? Spend the rest of our lives chasing lights in the desert? Patel's doing that. And I hope she finds answers. But that's not my path." Grant nodded. mine either. We finished our coffee and went our separate ways. I drove north to Montana for a bridge repair contract. Grant headed to Idaho for road work. We stayed in touch, checking in every few weeks, but we didn't talk about Dugway anymore. The pressure never came back. The nightly reminder at 8:30 p.m. was gone. Whatever connection had been forged between us and the phenomenon had been severed that night at the work site. But I still think about it. When I'm alone on a job site at dusk, when the sky turns that deep blue and the first stars appear, I look west and remember the triangle of lights expanding across the sky. I remember the crushing weight in my chest. I remember the way reality felt thin, like I could see through it to something else underneath. And I wonder if that thing, that opening, that tear, whatever it was, is still there, dormant, waiting, ready to rise again when the conditions are right. I don't have answers. I don't have proof. All I have is memory and a USB drive full of files I'll probably never look at again. But I know what I saw, and I know it changed me. That's enough.